The rain began before dawn. Heavy drops slammed against the rusty zinc roof of Uncle Benson's small bungalow, creating loud rattling sounds that shook the entire house. Inside the cramped kitchen, Anita stood barefoot on the cold floor, struggling to light the stove while smoke filled the air. She coughed softly and wiped sweat from her forehead with the edge of her old faded gown. It was only 5:12 a.m., yet she had already been awake for nearly 2 hours. That was Anita's life. Wake up before everyone. Sleep after everyone. Work endlessly. Complain never. At 25 years old, Anita had forgotten what rest felt like. From outside the kitchen came the sharp voice she dreaded every morning. Anita! Her body tensed instantly. Yes, Auntie Grace. Why is breakfast not ready yet? Do you want my children to starve? I'm almost done. Always almost done. Her aunt snapped. Useless girl. Anita lowered her eyes quietly. The insult hurt, even after years of hearing it. Still hurt. She turned back toward the pot of boiling beans, stirring carefully while her stomach growled painfully. She hadn't eaten properly since the previous afternoon. Usually, she only survived on leftovers after everyone else finished eating. Sometimes there was nothing left at all. But she had learned to endure hunger. Hunger was easier to bear than humiliation. From the living room came loud laughter. Her cousins were awake. A few seconds later, 2 teenage girls entered the kitchen wearing neat school uniforms, while Anita looked exhausted and worn out. One of them, Cynthia, wrinkled her nose dramatically. Why does this kitchen always smell when you're inside? The second one burst into laughter. Because she's always sweating like a pig. The girls high-fived each other. Anita stayed silent. She continued stirring the beans. Look at her arms, Cynthia mocked loudly. So fat. You'd think she eats 10 times a day, the other added. The girls laughed harder. Anita forced herself not to cry. She had heard worse. Far worse. Still, every insult chipped away at her heart. She wasn't blind. She knew what she looked like. Her body was large and soft no matter how little she ate. Her cheeks were full, her stomach round, and her arms thick. The neighbors constantly whispered about her weight whenever she walked past. Some people pitied her. Most mocked her. But none of them knew the truth. Stress had changed her body over the years. Depression had too. After her parents died, Anita stopped caring about herself. Food became the only comfort she had left in a house where love no longer existed. Her aunt suddenly entered the kitchen dramatically, tying her wrapper tightly around her waist. You're still standing there? She shouted. I'm serving the food now. Auntie Grace rolled her eyes. You are so slow. If laziness was money, you would be richer than Dangote. The girls laughed again. Anita quietly placed food onto plates and carried them carefully to the dining table. Nobody thanked her. Nobody ever did. Instead, her uncle entered moments later, sat down heavily, and frowned immediately. Why are the beans watery? I added a little extra water because, before she finished speaking, he slammed his spoon onto the table. So now you waste food too? I'm sorry, Uncle. You're always sorry, he barked. The entire dining room became silent. Anita stared at the floor. Her uncle's voice grew harsher. Since your parents died, all you've brought into this house is trouble. Those words pierced her chest. Because no matter how cruel he became, mentioning her parents always destroyed her. Anita still remembered the night they died. She had been 14. Her father kissed her forehead before leaving for a business trip with her mother. Study hard, he told her warmly. Her mother smiled. And don't finish all the biscuits before we return. That was the last time she saw them alive. A drunk driver crashed into their car on the highway. Everything changed after that. The comfortable life disappeared overnight. Her father's relatives took most of the property. Uncle Benson claimed he was helping by taking her in. But the truth became clear quickly. She wasn't family to them. She was free labor, a servant, a burden. Back in the dining room, Uncle Benson shook his head in disgust. Look at you, he muttered. 25 years old with no husband. Auntie Grace scoffed loudly. Who will marry her exactly? More laughter. Anita felt her face burn with humiliation. Men want beautiful women, Cynthia added wickedly. Not oversized housemaids. The table erupted again. Anita quietly picked up empty cups just to escape the conversation. As she walked back toward the kitchen, she heard her uncle mutter, "She should be grateful we even allowed her stay this long." Those words stayed in her chest all morning. Like stones. Heavy stones. Hours passed. Anita washed clothes outside under the hot afternoon sun until her hands became red and sore. After that, she swept the compound, cleaned the gutters, washed dishes, and ironed school uniforms. By evening, her back ached terribly. Still, nobody cared. Inside the house, her cousins watched television comfortably while Anita prepared dinner alone. The smell of fried stew filled the kitchen. She moved carefully despite her exhaustion. One mistake could ruin everything. And, unfortunately, that mistake came. As Anita carried a stack of plates toward the dining room, her tired fingers slipped. One plate crashed onto the floor instantly. Shatter. The sound echoed through the house like thunder. Anita froze. Her heart stopped. No, 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 no. Not again. Footsteps approached immediately. Heavy, angry footsteps. Uncle Benson stormed into the dining room furiously. What happened? Anita trembled violently. I'm sorry, Uncle. It slipped. Before she could finish, his hand struck her face hard. Slap. The force nearly knocked her over. You stupid girl. Pain exploded across her cheek. Auntie Grace rushed in dramatically. What did she do now? She broke another plate. What? Her aunt screamed. Do you know how expensive those plates are? I didn't mean to. Another slap. This time from her aunt. You destroy everything you touch. Tears filled Anita's eyes immediately. I said I'm sorry. Cynthia folded her arms. She probably wants attention. Her sister laughed mockingly. Or food. More laughter. Uncle Benson pointed angrily at Anita. I am tired of you. Anita's chest tightened. Uncle. No, he roared. Since you entered this house, there has been no peace. That's not true. You eat our food, waste our money, break our property. I do all the housework. The words escaped before Anita could stop herself. Silence fell immediately. Everybody stared at her. Even Anita herself looked shocked. For years she had swallowed her pain quietly. But tonight, something broke inside her. Her uncle's eyes darkened dangerously. What did you say? Anita stepped backward nervously. I just meant. You dare talk back to me? I'm sorry. You ungrateful girl. He grabbed her arm roughly and dragged her toward the hallway. Uncle, please. You think because we fed you, you can insult us? I didn't insult anybody. You are leaving this house tonight. Anita's entire body went cold. What? You heard me. Fear consumed her instantly. Please don't do this. But Uncle Benson had already entered her tiny room. The room was barely larger than a storage space. Old mattress, broken fan, tiny window, that was all she owned. Her uncle grabbed her small traveling bag angrily and began throwing her belongings inside carelessly. Clothes, shoes, books, everything. Anita cried openly now. Please, Uncle, please. You should have thought about that before disrespecting me. Auntie Grace stood at the doorway watching proudly. You've overstayed in this house anyway. Where will I go? Anita cried desperately. Her aunt shrugged coldly. That is your problem. Uncle Benson zipped the bag violently and dragged Anita toward the front door. Rain poured heavily outside now. The entire neighborhood was dark and wet. Some neighbors peeped through windows curiously. Others stood under balconies watching. Nobody intervened. Nobody helped. Please, Anita whispered weakly, but her uncle shoved her outside. Her bag landed in muddy water. Get out. Then finally, the gate slammed shut. Bang. Anita stood frozen in the rain. Her breathing became shaky. Everything felt unreal. After 11 years in that house, this was how it ended. Slowly, She picked up her soaked bag. The rain drenched her completely within seconds. Still, nobody opened the gate again. Nobody called her back. She stared at the house one final time, then turned away, and walked. The streets were nearly empty. Cars splashed dirty water onto the roadside as they sped past. Anita hugged herself tightly against the cold wind. She had nowhere to go. No friends. No savings. No family. Nothing. The pain in her chest became unbearable. At one point she stopped beneath a small shop roof and burst into tears. Real tears. The kind that come from years of suffering. "Mom!" she whispered brokenly. "I'm tired." Her voice disappeared beneath the sound of rain. For nearly 30 minutes, Anita remained there crying silently while people passed her without concern. Eventually, the shop owner chased her away. "You can't stand here all night." "I'm sorry." She continued walking again. Her legs hurt terribly now. Her slippers were soaked. Her stomach growled painfully. But worse than the hunger was the loneliness. Hours later, Anita finally reached a quiet bus stop. Exhausted, she sat slowly on the wooden bench. The rain softened into a drizzle. Streetlights flickered weakly above her. She looked miserable, hopeless, forgotten. Anita buried her face in her hands and cried again quietly. Maybe her uncle was right. Maybe she truly was worthless. Maybe nobody would ever love her. Maybe her life would never change. Across the empty road, headlights suddenly appeared. A long black luxury car slowed down. Anita barely noticed it at first. Cars like that belonged to another world. A world far away from hers. The rain continued falling softly as Anita sat at the lonely bus stop, hugging herself tightly against the cold night air. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her slippers were muddy. Her small travel bag rested beside her on the wet ground, containing the few belongings she had left in the world. Everything hurt. Her face still burned from the slap Uncle Benson gave her. Her chest felt heavy from humiliation. But worse than the physical pain was the terrifying reality finally settling into her mind. She was homeless. Completely homeless. Anita stared blankly at the road while cars rushed past without slowing down. Nobody noticed her. Nobody cared enough to ask if she was okay. That was how life had always been. People looked at her and only saw a poor, overweight woman. Nothing more. Nothing worth noticing. So when the black luxury car stopped across the street, Anita assumed it was waiting for someone important. Certainly not her. The expensive vehicle gleamed beneath the streetlights like something from another universe. Anita recognized the brand immediately even though she had never stepped inside such a car before. Only rich people owned cars like that. Very rich people. The tinted back window rolled down slowly. Anita glanced over absent-mindedly, then froze. Inside sat a man whose face she had seen countless times on television screens hanging inside electronic shops. Adrian Cole, the billionaire businessman everyone talked about. Even Uncle Benson used to brag whenever Adrian appeared on the news. "That man became a billionaire before 30, he would say proudly. "That is what success looks like." And now that same man was staring directly at her. Anita quickly looked away in embarrassment. Surely he wasn't looking at her. A few seconds later, the car door opened. A tall man wearing a black suit stepped out first. He held an umbrella respectfully while another figure slowly emerged from the car behind him. Adrian himself. Even in the rain and darkness, his presence felt powerful. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and effortlessly elegant. His black coat fit perfectly, and his expensive wristwatch flashed briefly beneath the streetlight. But what surprised Anita most was his expression. There was no disgust in his eyes, no mockery, only concern. Adrian studied the drenched woman sitting alone at the bus stop. Her oversized gown clung to her body from the rain. Her curly hair looked messy and soaked. Her eyes were red from crying. Yet somehow, there was something striking about her. Not physical perfection. Not glamour. Something deeper. Something real. He had noticed her earlier while his car stopped briefly at the traffic light. Most people would have ignored her completely, but Adrian couldn't. Maybe because he understood loneliness better than people imagined. Despite all his wealth, Adrian often felt surrounded by fake smiles and empty conversations. Everyone wanted something from him. Business deals, money, connections, fame. But the woman sitting before him looked like someone the world had forgotten entirely. And for some reason, that bothered him deeply. "You'll catch a cold sitting here," Adrian said gently. His voice startled Anita. She stood up immediately out of nervousness. "Yes, sir." The security man moved slightly closer, but Adrian raised a hand subtly, stopping him. "It's okay." Anita lowered her eyes quickly. She suddenly became painfully aware of how terrible she looked. Her gown was old. Her body looked huge beneath the wet fabric. Her face probably looked swollen and ugly from crying. Why would someone like Adrian Cole even speak to her? "I asked if you were okay," Adrian repeated softly. Anita forced herself to nod. "I'm fine." It was obviously a lie. Adrian glanced at the bag near her feet. "You're traveling." Her throat tightened. For a moment she considered lying again. But exhaustion weakened her defenses. "I don't have anywhere to go." The words came out quietly. Adrian's expression changed immediately. "What happened?" Anita hesitated. She wasn't used to people asking kindly. Usually questions came with judgment attached. Still, something about his calm voice made her answer honestly. "My uncle sent me away." "At this hour?" She nodded slowly. The billionaire frowned. "Why?" Anita swallowed hard. "I broke a plate." For a second Adrian thought he heard wrong. "A plate?" Tears gathered in Anita's eyes again. "It was an accident." Adrian stared at her silently, then looked at the rain, then back at her. "A plate? Someone threw this woman into the streets over a plate?" His jaw tightened slightly. Years in business had taught him how cruel people could be. He had seen betrayal, greed, and manipulation from powerful individuals. But this felt different. This felt heartless. "How long have you been out here?" he asked. "Since evening." "And nobody came looking for you?" Anita shook her head. The answer irritated Adrian more than expected. He glanced briefly at his driver. The older man seemed uncomfortable too. "Sir," the driver said quietly, "perhaps we should leave before the rain gets heavier." Normally Adrian would agree immediately. He hated unnecessary attention. But tonight something kept him rooted there. Maybe it was the sadness in her eyes. Or maybe it was the fact that despite everything, she still spoke politely. No bitterness. No entitlement. Just pain. "What's your name?" Adrian asked. "Anita." "Anita what?" "Anita Williams." He nodded slowly. "Well, Anita Williams, you can't stay here tonight." Panic flashed across her face instantly. "Oh no, sir. I'm not asking for money. I didn't say you were. I'll figure something out." "How?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Because truthfully, she had no plan. No destination. Nothing. Adrian exhaled quietly. "Do you have friends?" "No." "Family?" She laughed bitterly through tears. "Not anymore." That answer hit harder than Adrian expected. For a moment he simply stared at her. Then he made a decision. "Come with me." Anita blinked rapidly. "What?" "I have a guest apartment nearby. You can stay there tonight." Her eyes widened with fear and confusion. "No, sir. I can't." "Why not?" "People like me don't belong around people like you." The statement came out automatically, like something she had repeated to herself for years. Adrian's brows furrowed. "People like you?" Anita looked embarrassed now. "I didn't mean." "What exactly does that mean?" She stared at the ground. "You're rich, important, educated. And I'm just—" Her voice faded. Adrian studied her carefully. "Just what?" Anita's fingers tightened around her bag. "A poor, fat orphan." The words sliced through the rainy silence. Adrian's expression softened instantly. The way she said it, like she genuinely believed her existence was something shameful. He suddenly wondered how many cruel things had been said to her over the years. Far too many, apparently. "Well," Adrian said calmly, I don't see just anything when I look at you. Anita looked stunned. No one had ever answered her that way before. The rain continued falling quietly around them. Adrian spoke again. You need somewhere safe tonight. I don't want to cause trouble. You won't. But why are you helping me? That question lingered between them. Even Adrian himself didn't fully know the answer. Finally, he shrugged slightly. Because someone should. Something inside Anita cracked emotionally. Not from sadness this time, but from the unfamiliar feeling of kindness. Real kindness. Her eyes filled again immediately. Embarrassed, she wiped them quickly. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing for existing, Adrian said gently. The words stunned her. Nobody had ever spoken to her like that. Ever. Adrian opened the car door. Get in before you freeze. Anita hesitated nervously. Her mind screamed warnings. What if this was dangerous? What if it was a mistake? But then she looked back at the empty dark streets behind her. She had nowhere else to go. Slowly, she picked up her bag. The security guard moved aside respectfully while Anita carefully entered the luxury car. The interior looked unbelievable. Soft leather seats, warm lighting. The car even smelled expensive. Anita became terrified she might dirty something with her wet clothes. I'm sorry, she whispered again. Adrian almost smiled. For what now? For soaking your car. It's a car, Anita, not a museum. Despite herself, she let out a tiny nervous laugh. And Adrian noticed immediately. It was small, brief, but genuine. Interesting, he thought. The driver started moving. For several minutes silence filled the car. Anita sat stiffly near the door, afraid to touch anything. Meanwhile, Adrian observed her quietly. Most women around him tried too hard. They flirted, performed, pretended. But Anita seemed focused only on surviving the night. That honesty felt strangely refreshing. You haven't eaten, have you? Adrian suddenly asked. Anita blinked. How did you know? Because you keep staring at the snacks. Mortified, Anita quickly looked away from the small refreshment tray beside her. I'm sorry. Adrian chuckled softly for the first time that night. You really apologize too much. Then he handed her a wrapped sandwich from the tray. Eat. Anita hesitated. I can't take your food. You can. I'm offering it. Her stomach growled loudly at the worst possible moment. Adrian pretended not to notice. Slowly, Anita accepted the sandwich. Thank you. She tried eating carefully and slowly, but hunger took over quickly. Adrian watched silently as she finished almost the entire thing within minutes. His chest tightened unexpectedly. How long had it been since someone properly cared for her? When she realized he was watching, Anita looked embarrassed again. I didn't mean to eat so fast. You were hungry. Another simple answer. No judgment. No cruel comments about her weight. Just understanding. For reasons Anita couldn't explain, that almost made her cry again. About 30 minutes later, the car entered one of the wealthiest parts of the city. Massive gates opened automatically ahead of them. Anita's eyes widened. The buildings looked like luxury hotels. This is where you live? She asked softly. One of the places. One of the places. The words alone reminded Anita how different their worlds were. The car finally stopped before a beautiful modern apartment building. Staff members rushed forward immediately with umbrellas. Good evening, Mr. Cole. Adrian nodded briefly before turning to Anita. You'll stay here tonight. She stared at the building nervously. This place looks expensive. It is. I can't afford this. You're not paying. Anita nearly protested again, but exhaustion overwhelmed her completely. She followed Adrian inside slowly. Everything sparkled. Marble floors, golden lights, fresh flowers. The building looked like heaven compared to her uncle's cramped house. A woman at the reception desk smiled politely. Should we prepare the guest suite, sir? Yes. The receptionist glanced curiously at Anita but wisely said nothing. Moments later, they entered a private elevator. Anita clutched her bag tightly. Her entire life felt unreal now. A few hours ago, she was being thrown into the rain. Now she stood inside a billionaire's luxury building. The elevator doors opened into a stunning apartment. Anita gasped softly. The living room alone was larger than Uncle Benson's entire house. Adrian placed a keycard gently onto the table. "You'll stay here for now." Anita turned toward him slowly. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Adrian looked at her for a long moment, then quietly answered, "Because life has already been cruel enough to you." And somehow, those words touched Anita more deeply than anything else ever had. Anita barely slept that night, not because the apartment was uncomfortable, but because it was too comfortable. The enormous bed felt softer than anything she had ever touched before. The blankets smelled fresh and warm. Even the dim golden lights in the bedroom looked peaceful. It didn't feel real. Several times during the night, Anita woke up suddenly, convinced someone would bang on the door and throw her out again. Each time, silence greeted her. No yelling, no insults, no commands, just silence. Safe silence. Around 3 a.m., Anita slowly sat up on the bed and looked around the luxurious room again. The walls were beautifully decorated with modern paintings. The curtains stretched from ceiling to floor. A television larger than the one Uncle Benson bragged about hung on the wall across from her. Everything looked expensive. Carefully, Anita touched the bedsheet beneath her fingers. Soft, too soft. Tears suddenly filled her eyes again. All her life, comfort belonged to other people. Never her. She remembered sleeping on the thin mattress in her uncle's storage room during cold nights while her cousins enjoyed air conditioning. She remembered starving quietly while others ate until they were full. She remembered crying silently into old pillows so nobody would hear her. And now suddenly, she was here, inside a billionaire's guest apartment, because a stranger chose kindness. The thought overwhelmed her emotionally. Anita hugged the blanket tightly and whispered softly into the darkness. "Thank you, Mom. Maybe you're still watching over me." Eventually, exhaustion pulled her back to sleep. For the first time in many years, Anita slept peacefully. Morning sunlight poured gently through the giant windows. Anita stirred slowly beneath the blankets. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then reality returned instantly. The apartment. Adrian. Last night. Her eyes widened. She quickly sat up. The room remained exactly the same. So it wasn't a dream. A nervous breath escaped her lips. Suddenly there was a gentle knock on the bedroom door. Anita froze. "Miss Anita?" A soft female voice called politely. "May I come in?" Anita quickly adjusted her oversized gown. "Yes." The door opened carefully. A middle-aged woman wearing a neat uniform smiled warmly. "Good morning. My name is Mrs. Taylor. Mr. Cole asked me to assist you." Anita blinked in confusion. "Assist me?" "Yes. Breakfast is ready whenever you're comfortable." Breakfast? Prepared for her? The idea alone felt strange. "Oh, thank you." Mrs. Taylor's smile widened kindly. "There are fresh towels and clothes in the bathroom as well." Anita's eyes widened. "Clothes?" "Yes, ma'am." "Ma'am." Nobody had called her that before. Not respectfully. Mrs. Taylor continued gently, "If you need anything, please let me know." After she left, Anita slowly entered the bathroom, then stopped completely. The bathroom alone looked larger than her uncle's bedroom. Beautiful mirrors lined the walls. The bathtub looked like something from movies. Expensive soaps and perfumes rested neatly beside folded white towels. Anita stared at her reflection in the mirror, down sadly. Maybe Adrian only helped her because he pitied her. A man like him could never truly notice a woman like her. The thought hurt more than expected. She quickly pushed it away. "Don't be stupid," she whispered to herself. After showering, Anita carefully opened the shopping bag left beside the sink. Inside were beautiful clothes. Real beautiful clothes. Soft cream-colored dresses. Comfortable jeans. Blouses. Sandals. Even skincare products. Anita touched everything carefully like fragile treasure. Nobody had bought clothes for her in years. Usually she wore old outfits discarded by her cousins. Her throat tightened emotionally. Why would Adrian do all this for someone he barely knew? Eventually she chose a simple blue dress and changed nervously. When she looked in the mirror again, she almost didn't recognize herself. The dress fit her perfectly. Not too tight, not uncomfortable. For once, she actually looked nice. A tiny smile touched her lips, then disappeared quickly. Don't get used to this, she warned herself. People don't stay kind forever. Still, something deep inside her heart had already started changing. Downstairs, the dining area looked elegant and peaceful. Anita hesitated near the entrance. The long dining table held enough food to feed an entire family. Eggs, toast, fruit, tea, pancakes, fresh juice. Her stomach growled immediately. Mrs. Taylor smiled kindly again. Please eat. Anita sat carefully at the edge of a chair like someone afraid of breaking something. As she slowly served herself food, she kept glancing around nervously. Part of her still expected shouting, or insults, or someone accusing her of eating too much. But none came. Instead, Mrs. Taylor simply asked politely, "Would you like more tea?" Anita nearly cried again. People truly lived like this? Peacefully? Without cruelty? Halfway through breakfast, footsteps approached. Anita looked up immediately. Adrian entered wearing a fitted black shirt and dark trousers, looking effortlessly handsome even this early in the morning. The moment he saw her, he paused slightly. The blue dress suited her beautifully, and for the first time, he noticed something beneath the sadness she carried. Warmth, gentleness. Anita stood up quickly. "Good morning, sir." Adrian frowned slightly. "You don't have to stand every time I enter a room." "Oh, sorry." "There you go apologizing again." A shy, embarrassed smile appeared on Anita's face. Strangely, Adrian liked seeing it. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. "A little. You look better." Her cheeks warmed immediately. "Thank you." Adrian sat across from her while Mrs. Taylor poured coffee for him. "You should eat more," he said casually after noticing how little food Anita served herself. "I already ate enough. That plate looks like a child's breakfast." Anita lowered her eyes awkwardly. "I don't usually eat in front of people." "Why?" She hesitated, then answered honestly. "My cousins always mocked me whenever I ate." Adrian's expression darkened instantly. Even something as simple as eating had become painful for her. That angered him more than it should. "Well," he said calmly, "nobody here is going to insult you for existing." The simple statement touched Anita deeply. She looked at him carefully for a moment. "You're very different from other rich people." Adrian chuckled softly. "You know many billionaires?" A tiny laugh escaped her lips. "No." He smiled slightly, and somehow the atmosphere around them became lighter. For the next few days, Anita remained inside the apartment mostly because she felt overwhelmed by everything. Mrs. Taylor helped her settle in. The staff treated her respectfully. Nobody shouted at her. Nobody insulted her body. Nobody treated her like a burden. The adjustment almost felt harder than the suffering, because Anita wasn't used to kindness. Every time someone spoke politely to her, she became suspicious. One afternoon, she accidentally dropped a glass cup while helping Mrs. Taylor in the kitchen. The cup shattered instantly. Anita panicked immediately. "Oh no!" Her breathing quickened. "I'm sorry. I'll clean it. Please don't be angry." Mrs. Taylor looked shocked. "Angry? I didn't mean to break it." "Miss Anita," the woman interrupted gently. "It's only a glass." Anita froze. Only a glass. Such simple words. Yet they nearly broke her emotionally. Because in her old life, a broken plate cost her a home. Mrs. Taylor suddenly understood. Pain flashed across the older woman's eyes. Carefully, she touched Anita's shoulder. "You're safe here." That sentence nearly made Anita cry on the spot. Safe. What a beautiful word. Meanwhile, Adrian found himself thinking about Anita constantly. At work, during meetings, even while reviewing contracts, his mind occasionally drifted back to her. The sadness in her eyes haunted him. But so did something else. Her kindness. Despite everything she suffered, Anita remained gentle. That fascinated him. One evening, Adrian returned earlier than usual, and found Anita sitting quietly on the balcony overlooking the city. The sunset painted the sky orange and gold around her. For a moment Adrian simply watched silently. She looked peaceful, beautifully peaceful, not glamorous like the women usually surrounding him, not polished or artificial, just real. Anita noticed him and quickly stood. "Sorry, I didn't hear you come in. You don't have to apologize every 5 minutes." That made her smile slightly again. Adrian leaned casually against the balcony doorway. "How are you adjusting? It still feels unreal." "You'll get used to it." Anita looked down at the city lights below. "I don't think people like me ever get used to places like this." There's that phrase again. She looked confused. "People like me." Adrian stepped closer. "You talk about yourself like you're less valuable than everyone else." Anita laughed softly, but there was sadness behind it. "Maybe because that's how I've always been treated." The honesty in her voice hit him unexpectedly hard. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Adrian quietly asked, "What did you want to become before life got difficult?" Anita blinked in surprise. Nobody had ever asked her that before. Not once. She thought carefully. "When I was younger, I wanted to work in an office." "An office?" She nodded shyly. "I liked organizing things. My father used to say I was very smart with records and numbers." "What stopped you?" Her expression dimmed immediately. "Life." Adrian studied her face. Something about that answer irritated him deeply. So much potential crushed by cruelty. "So," he said after a moment, "what if life gave you another chance?" Anita laughed softly again. "That only happens in movies." "Humor me." She hesitated, then quietly admitted, "I think I would have liked to feel important somewhere." The words came out so softly they almost disappeared. But Adrian heard them clearly. Important somewhere. Not rich, not famous, just valued, respected, seen. And suddenly Adrian made a decision, a serious one. The next morning, Anita woke to another knock at her door. When she opened it, Mrs. Taylor smiled warmly. "Mr. Cole would like to see you downstairs." Nervousness immediately filled Anita's chest. Had she done something wrong? Did he want her to leave now? Her heart pounded as she hurried downstairs. Adrian stood near the living room holding a tablet. When he saw her, he smiled faintly. "Morning." "Good morning. I have a question for you." Anita swallowed nervously. "Yes. How would you feel about working for me?" Her eyes widened completely. "Working? In my company?" Anita stared at him in shock. "You can't be serious." "I am." No, I've never worked in an office before." "You can learn." "But I don't have experience." "You'll gain experience." She looked completely overwhelmed now. "Why would you trust me?" Adrian answered immediately. "Because I think you're capable." Capable. Nobody had called her that in years. Maybe ever. Anita felt tears burning her eyes again. "You barely know me." Adrian smiled slightly. "Sometimes it doesn't take long to recognize good people." Her chest tightened emotionally. "I'm not educated like the women around you. I'm not hiring you to impress anybody. I'm fat." The words escaped before she could stop them. Silence followed. Adrian looked directly at her. And for the first time in her life, a man's eyes held absolutely no disgust while looking at her body. Instead, he said calmly, "So?" Anita blinked. "So?" she repeated weakly. "Yes. So what?" Tears instantly filled her eyes. "You really don't see anything wrong with me?" Adrian's expression softened deeply. "No, Anita." His voice became gentler. "I see someone who survived things that would have destroyed most people." Her lips trembled. "And I think you're far stronger than you realize." At that moment, something inside Anita slowly began healing. Anita's first day at Cole Enterprises felt like stepping into another universe. The building itself towered above the city like a monument to power and success. Glass walls reflected the bright morning sunlight while luxury cars filled the parking lot below. Standing at the entrance in her new navy blue office dress, Anita felt her confidence disappearing rapidly. People rushed past her wearing expensive suits and high heels, carrying laptops and coffee cups while speaking confidently into phones. They all looked important, successful, elegant. And then there was her, a poor orphan who had spent most of her life washing plates and scrubbing floors. Her palms became sweaty. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe Adrian only offered her the job out of pity. She almost turned around and left. But before fear could fully consume her, a familiar voice spoke behind her. "You're thinking too much again." Anita turned immediately. Adrian stood there wearing a charcoal gray suit that fit him perfectly. Employees walking past greeted him respectfully while secretly staring at Anita curiously. She suddenly felt even more nervous. "I don't belong here," she admitted quietly. Adrian looked at her calmly. "Why? Look at everyone. So, they all look sophisticated. And," Anita sighed softly, "and I look like someone who accidentally entered the wrong building." A small smile appeared on Adrian's face. "You know what I see?" She shook her head. "A woman who survived difficult things and still showed up." The words settled warmly inside her chest. Adrian stepped slightly closer. "Besides," he added casually, "half the people in this building are pretending to know what they're doing." Anita laughed unexpectedly. A real laugh. And Adrian noticed immediately how beautiful she looked when she forgot to be insecure. "There's the smile I was looking for," he said softly. Anita's cheeks warmed instantly. Before she could respond, Adrian gently placed a keycard in her hand. "Ready?" She took a deep, nervous breath. "No," he chuckled. "Good enough." Inside the company headquarters, employees immediately became curious. Everyone knew Adrian Cole, and everyone knew he never brought women into the office, especially not repeatedly. Whispers followed Anita everywhere. "Who is she? Is that his girlfriend? She doesn't look like the women he usually dates." Anita heard every word. Each whisper made her more self-conscious. She became painfully aware of her body as they walked through the building. Her dress fit beautifully, but years of insults made her feel exposed anyway. She imagined people staring at her stomach, her arms, her size. Instinctively, she crossed her arms over herself. Adrian noticed immediately. Without stopping, he said quietly, "Don't hide." Anita blinked. "What? You keep trying to make yourself smaller." Her throat tightened. "It's a habit." "Well, break it." She looked down sadly. "Easy for you to say." Adrian stopped walking. Employees nearby quickly pretended not to watch. He turned fully toward her. "No, Anita. Easy for the world to mistreat kind people until they forget their worth." His voice softened. "But I'm not going to let you speak about yourself like you're less than anybody here." The sincerity in his eyes shook her deeply. Nobody had ever defended her confidence before. Nobody. A few moments later, Adrian introduced her to the administrative department manager, Mrs. Green. "She'll be assisting your team," Adrian explained. Mrs. Green smiled warmly. "Welcome to Cole Enterprises." Anita shook her hand nervously. "Thank you. You'll do fine here," the older woman assured her kindly. Adrian glanced toward Anita one last time before leaving for meetings. "If anyone gives you trouble," he said calmly, "tell me immediately." The employees nearby exchanged surprised looks. It was obvious now. Their billionaire boss cared about this woman. Very much. The moment Adrian disappeared into the elevator, whispers exploded quietly around the office. "Did you see the way he looked at her? She must be special." "But she's so." The woman hesitated. "So what?" another employee asked. The first woman lowered her voice. "Big." Anita pretended not to hear, but the words still hurt. By lunchtime, Anita already felt emotionally exhausted. The office work itself wasn't difficult. In fact, she learned surprisingly fast. Organizing files, arranging schedules, updating records, everything came naturally to her. For the first time in years, she actually felt useful, important, but emotionally she still struggled. Every mirror reminded her she looked different from the slim, polished women surrounding Adrian daily. Around noon, Anita entered the staff restroom quietly. Inside, two female employees stood near the mirror touching up makeup. They stopped talking the second Anita entered. Then one smirked. "So it's true." The other folded her arms. "What's true?" "She's the woman Mr. Cole keeps bringing around." The women looked Anita up and down openly. One laughed softly. "I honestly thought he'd date models forever." Anita immediately lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry. I just came to wash my hands." "We didn't say anything," the first woman replied fake sweetly. "But seriously," the second added, "what does a billionaire even see in someone like you?" Anita froze. The old familiar shame returned instantly. "Someone like you." Those words again. Always those words. The women exchanged amused looks before walking away laughing quietly. The restroom suddenly felt too small. Too hot. Anita gripped the sink tightly while tears filled her eyes. Why did people always make her body feel like a crime? Why was existing peacefully so difficult? She stared at her reflection in the mirror again. Maybe they were right. Maybe Adrian would eventually realize he deserved someone prettier. Slimmer. More glamorous. Someone who matched his world. The thought hurt far more than it should have. Because somewhere along the way, Anita had started caring about his opinion deeply. Too deeply. That evening, Adrian noticed her unusual silence immediately during the ride home. "You're quiet." "I'm just tired." He glanced at her carefully. "You sure?" Anita forced a smile. "Work was fine." Adrian remained unconvinced. He had become good at reading her expressions surprisingly quickly. "Did someone say something to you?" Her eyes widened slightly. "No, that wasn't convincing." Anita looked out the window. "It's nothing important." Adrian sighed softly. "Anita." The gentle firmness in his voice weakened her defenses immediately. She swallowed hard. People were talking. What people? Some women at work. His expression darkened instantly. What did they say? "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." Anita hesitated, then quietly admitted, "They asked what someone like you could possibly see in someone like me." Silence filled the car. Dangerous silence. Adrian's jaw tightened visibly. "And what exactly does that mean?" Anita gave a sad laugh. "You know what it means." "No," he replied calmly. "I want to hear you say it." She looked embarrassed immediately. "They meant my size." Adrian leaned back slightly. For a moment he simply stared ahead through the windshield. Then he spoke quietly. "Do you know something interesting?" Anita looked confused. The people who criticize others most harshly are usually deeply unhappy with themselves. That doesn't stop it from hurting. "No," Adrian admitted softly. "It doesn't." His honesty surprised her. Most people usually dismissed her pain quickly, but Adrian never did. After a moment he turned toward her fully. "Look at me." Slowly, Anita obeyed. "I need you to understand something clearly," he said. "You do not owe this world's smallness to deserve kindness." Her breathing caught. "And your body is not something you should apologize for." Anita stared at him silently. Emotion tightened painfully in her chest. Nobody had ever defended her this way before. Nobody had ever spoken about her body without cruelty attached. Adrian continued gently. "You've spent years around people who made you believe your worth depends on your appearance." His eyes softened. "But they lied to you." Anita felt tears gathering again. "I want to believe that. Then start trying." That night Anita cried in her room again. But differently this time. Not from hopelessness. From confusion. Because Adrian's words were slowly breaking walls she had built around herself for years. Walls made from shame, fear, self-hatred. And somehow, that terrified her. Over the next few weeks, Anita became more comfortable at the company. Employees slowly warmed up to her after realizing how kind and hardworking she was. She treated cleaners respectfully, helped interns without complaining, remembered everyone's birthdays. People naturally liked being around her, including Adrian, especially Adrian. He found excuses to visit her department constantly. Sometimes he brought coffee. Other times he asked unnecessary questions just to hear her voice. And slowly, the entire office noticed something undeniable. Their billionaire CEO smiled more around Anita. One rainy evening, Adrian entered her office carrying 2 takeout bags. "You still here?" Anita looked up from her computer. "So are you." He smirked slightly. "Fair point." Her stomach growled immediately at the smell of food. Adrian pretended not to notice. "I brought dinner." "You didn't have to." "I know." The simplicity of his answer made her smile again. They ate together quietly while rain tapped softly against the windows. For once, Anita felt peaceful, comfortable, safe. Then Adrian suddenly asked, "Why do you always doubt yourself so much?" The question caught her off guard. Anita looked down at her food. "Because life gives people reasons to." "That's not an answer." She sighed softly. "When people insult you long enough, eventually you start believing them." Adrian's expression changed immediately. "That's what happened to you, isn't it?" She nodded slowly. "My cousins used to laugh whenever I dressed up." Her voice grew quieter. "They'd tell me makeup couldn't fix being fat." Adrian looked furious. "Anita." "I stopped trying after a while." Silence settled briefly between them. Then Adrian said something unexpected. "I think you're beautiful." Everything stopped. Even the rain seemed quieter suddenly. Anita stared at him in shock. Surely she heard wrong. "What?" Adrian held her gaze steadily. "I said I think you're beautiful." Her heart began pounding wildly. "Nobody has ever said that to me before." "That's because they were blind." The sincerity in his voice completely shattered her defenses. Anita looked away quickly, overwhelmed emotionally. "Adrian." It was the first time she called him by his name instead of sir, and the sound of it affected him far more than expected. He moved slightly closer. "You don't have to look away every time someone compliments you." "I'm not used to it." "Well," he said softly, "you better start getting used to it." Their eyes locked. The air between them changed instantly. Warmer, softer, dangerously intimate. Anita's breathing became uneven. So did Adrian's. For several seconds, neither moved, neither spoke. Then suddenly Anita looked down nervously. "This is probably a bad idea." "What is?" "Whatever this is." Adrian studied her carefully. "And what exactly do you think this is?" She laughed softly from nervousness. "I don't know." But deep down, she did know. And so did he. Something real was happening between them. Something neither expected. Something growing quietly day by day. Feelings. Powerful feelings. And the more time Adrian spent with Anita, the more impossible it became to ignore them. Because somewhere between the rainy night at the bus stop and these quiet dinners together, the billionaire had started falling in love. Hard. After that rainy evening in the office, everything between Anita and Adrian changed. Not suddenly, not loudly, but quietly, like a candle slowly growing brighter in a dark room. The next morning, Anita woke up unable to stop thinking about his words. "I think you're beautiful." No matter how many times she replayed the sentence in her mind, it still felt unreal. Beautiful. That word had never belonged to her before. Not in school. Not at her uncle's house. Not anywhere. Growing up, beauty was always reserved for girls like Cynthia, slim girls with perfect figures and confident smiles. Girls people noticed immediately when they entered rooms. Anita had always been the opposite. Ignored at best. Mocked at worst. So why did Adrian look at her like she mattered? The question followed her everywhere. At breakfast, she accidentally poured tea outside her cup because she was distracted. Mrs. Taylor smiled knowingly. "You seem happy this morning." Anita nearly choked. Happy. A little distracted too. Anita quickly looked down at her plate. "No, I'm normal." Mrs. Taylor chuckled softly but said nothing else. Meanwhile, across the city, Adrian sat through an executive meeting while completely ignoring half the presentation in front of him. His business partner, Daniel, frowned. "Are you even listening?" Daniel sighed heavily. "That bad, huh?" Adrian blinked. "What are you talking about?" You've checked your phone 6 times in 10 minutes. Adrian leaned back casually. So, you only do that when a woman is involved. There's no woman involved. Daniel laughed immediately. Adrian Cole lying? Now I'm interested. Adrian shook his head, trying to focus on the documents again. But it was useless. His mind kept drifting back to Anita, her shy smile, the way her eyes widened whenever he complimented her, the way she still looked surprised every time someone treated her kindly, and worst of all, the growing protective anger he felt whenever he imagined people hurting her. That part concerned him. Adrian had dated beautiful women before, models, socialites, actresses, but none of them stayed in his thoughts like this. None of them affected him emotionally. Anita did. Too much. Later that afternoon, Adrian walked into the administrative department pretending he needed a file. In reality, he simply wanted to see her. He spotted Anita immediately near the printer, organizing folders carefully while helping one of the interns. The young intern looked stressed. "I'm sorry. I think I messed everything up." Anita smiled gently. "It's okay. We'll fix it together." The girl relaxed instantly. Adrian stood there silently for a moment watching her. That was what drew him toward Anita more than anything else. Her kindness felt natural, not performative, not manipulative, just genuine, as if no matter how cruel the world became toward her, she still refused to become cruel herself. When Anita noticed Adrian standing nearby, she straightened nervously. "Sir, I mean, Adrian." The way she corrected herself made him smile slightly. "Busy. A little. I need those files urgently," he said seriously. Anita immediately grabbed the folders. "Oh, sorry." Then Adrian leaned slightly closer and lowered his voice. "Relax. I was joking." She blinked. "You came here to joke?" "Maybe." Her lips twitched with amusement. Employees nearby secretly watched the interaction carefully. The chemistry between them had become impossible to ignore now, especially because Adrian looked softer around Anita, lighter, almost peaceful. One woman whispered quietly to another, "He really likes her." The second woman looked confused. "But why her?" The first woman shrugged thoughtfully. "Maybe because she's real." That evening, social media exploded unexpectedly. Someone had secretly taken photos of Adrian and Anita leaving work together. Within hours, blogs and gossip pages posted headlines everywhere. Billionaire Adrian Cole spotted with mystery plus-sized woman. New girlfriend or charity case? Who is the woman stealing Adrian Cole's heart? Anita discovered everything the next morning, and it destroyed her instantly. She sat frozen inside the apartment staring at cruel comments flooding across her phone screen. She trapped him. He must pity her. No billionaire would actually want her. She's too fat for him. Money really gives ugly women confidence. Each comment felt like a knife. Years of insecurity came crashing back all at once. Her chest tightened painfully. Her breathing became shaky. By the time Adrian arrived that evening, Anita had cried herself into exhaustion. He found her sitting quietly near the balcony holding her phone tightly. Something was immediately wrong. He crossed the room quickly. "Anita." She wiped her face fast. "I'm okay." "No, you're not." He noticed the phone immediately, then saw the articles. Adrian's expression darkened dangerously. "Who gave the press those photos?" "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." Anita stood suddenly. "No, Adrian, it matters to me." Her voice cracked emotionally. "These people are laughing at you because of me. They're idiots. They're right." The words exploded out before she could stop them. Silence filled the room instantly. Adrian stared at her carefully. Anita looked ashamed immediately. "I'm sorry." "No," Adrian said calmly. "Explain that sentence." Tears filled her eyes again. "You're Adrian Cole." "Yes." "You're successful, attractive, rich, powerful. And look at me." Her voice broke completely now. "I'm not the kind of woman people expect besides someone like you." Adrian's jaw tightened. "What kind of woman is that?" "You know what I mean." No, he replied firmly. I want to hear you say it. Anita hugged herself tightly. Someone prettier, smaller, more elegant. Adrian walked closer slowly. Who taught you that your size determines your worth? She laughed bitterly through tears. Everyone. The honesty in her answer hit him hard. Everyone. Not one person. Not a few bullies. Everyone. How much pain had this woman carried alone? Adrian gently took the phone from her hands and placed it on the table. Then he looked directly into her eyes. I need you to listen to me carefully. Anita tried looking away. He stepped closer. No. Look at me. Slowly, she obeyed. What people say online means nothing to me. But nothing. His voice remained calm but firm. You know what I see when I look at you? Anita's lips trembled. A woman who survived cruelty and still remained kind. Her breathing became uneven. A woman who works harder than anyone around her. His eyes softened deeply. A woman whose smile honestly affects me more than it should. Tears rolled down Anita's cheeks silently. Because he sounded sincere. Completely sincere. And that scared her. You don't understand, she whispered weakly. People like me don't get chosen. The sentence shattered something inside Adrian emotionally. People like me. Again. Always that phrase. He stepped even closer now. Well, I'm choosing you. Anita froze. The room became painfully quiet. Neither moved. Neither breathed properly. Adrian spoke softly now. I like you, Anita. Her heart pounded wildly. A lot. Tears blurred her vision instantly. No one has ever liked me like this before. That sounds like their loss. She shook her head emotionally. You could have anybody. I don't want just anybody. The tension between them became unbearable now. Warm. Emotional. Intimate. Anita's voice came out barely above a whisper. Why me? Adrian stared at her for a long moment, then answered honestly. Because you make me feel peaceful. The words hit her deeply. I spend my life surrounded by people pretending to be something, he continued quietly. But with you, everything feels real. Anita felt like her heart might explode. Nobody had ever spoken to her this way before. Nobody had ever looked at her body without judgment hiding somewhere underneath. But Adrian's eyes held only warmth, only sincerity, only affection. And slowly, very slowly, he lifted his hand toward her face. Anita held her breath. His fingers gently brushed away tears from her cheeks. You deserve to be loved properly, he whispered. That sentence broke the final wall around her heart. Without thinking, Anita leaned slightly into his touch. Adrian's breathing deepened immediately. Their faces were dangerously close now. Close enough for Anita to notice tiny details she never saw before. The faint scar near his jaw. The warmth in his dark eyes. The way he looked at her like she was precious. And suddenly, Adrian kissed her. Softly, slowly, carefully. As though he wanted to make absolutely sure she understood this was real. Anita froze completely. Her first instinct was disbelief. A billionaire was kissing her. Not as a joke. Not from pity. Not secretly embarrassed. But genuinely, tenderly. Emotion crashed through her all at once. Fear. Relief. Hope. Years of loneliness. When Adrian slowly pulled back, he studied her face carefully. You okay? Anita stared at him speechlessly, then suddenly laughed through tears. I think my heart stopped. Adrian chuckled softly. Mine too. That made her laugh harder. And God, he loved hearing that sound. For several seconds they simply stood there smiling at each other. Then Anita's expression slowly changed again. Fear returned. Adrian noticed immediately. What is it? She hesitated. What if you regret this later? I won't. You don't know that. I do. But your world is different from mine. Adrian sighed softly. Yes, it is. That matters. Only if we let it. Anita looked down sadly. I don't want to become another embarrassing headline for you. Adrian gently lifted her chin again. You are not embarrassing. His voice deepened slightly. And anybody who makes you feel that way doesn't deserve access to you. Her eyes filled again. How do you always know what to say? Adrian smiled faintly. I don't. Yes, you do. No, he admitted quietly. I just mean what I say. That honesty affected her more than grand romantic speeches ever could. Because after a lifetime of cruelty, simple sincerity felt extraordinary. A few days later, Adrian did something that shocked the entire company. He arrived at work holding Anita's hand openly. No hiding, no secrecy. The office practically exploded with gossip. Employees stared openly. Phones nearly dropped. Even Daniel almost choked on his coffee. Well, he muttered, this is serious. Anita felt nervous under everyone's attention. Instinctively, she tried pulling her hand away, but Adrian held it tighter gently. Don't hide, he whispered. Her chest warmed immediately. As they walked through the building together, whispers followed them everywhere. But this time, something felt different, because Adrian wasn't ashamed of her. Not even slightly. And slowly, for the first time in her life, Anita began wondering if maybe, just maybe, she deserved happiness too. The moment Adrian mentioned meeting his parents, Anita nearly dropped the mug she was holding. What? They were sitting together in the apartment living room on a quiet Sunday evening. Rain tapped gently against the windows while soft music played faintly in the background. Adrian looked far too calm for someone who had just destroyed her peace of mind. My parents invited us for dinner tomorrow. The word alone made Anita nervous. Adrian, she said slowly, your parents know about me? He looked amused. Of course they know about you. How much do they know? A small smile appeared on his face. Enough. Anita immediately became suspicious. What does that mean? It means my mother has asked about you at least 20 times this week. That is not helping. Adrian laughed softly while Anita covered her face dramatically. Oh my God! Relax. How can I relax? She cried. Your parents are rich billionaires. My father built businesses. He's not the King of England. That's easy for you to say. Adrian leaned back against the couch comfortably. You're panicking already and dinner is tomorrow. Anita stared at him helplessly. What if they hate me? They won't. You don't know that. Yes, I do. How? Because they raised me. That answer should have comforted her. Instead, it made her even more anxious. Because if Adrian came from a loving family, then they were probably elegant, sophisticated people with impossible standards. People who would take one look at her and wonder why their billionaire son brought home an overweight orphan with trauma and insecurity. Anita suddenly stood up. I can't do this. Adrian looked up calmly. You're doing it. No. Yes. What if I embarrass you? He sighed softly. Anita. I'm serious. So am I. He stood and walked toward her slowly. You are not embarrassing. She crossed her arms tightly. You say that because you like me. I say it because it's true. Anita looked away nervously. You don't understand how people like your parents think. Adrian's expression softened slightly. You know what my mother asked me yesterday? What? She asked whether you were eating properly. Anita blinked in surprise. What? She said you looked sad in one of the photos online. Anita stared at him. She noticed that? Yes. Something warm stirred inside Anita's chest. Still, fear remained stronger. That night she barely slept. Again. Only this time it wasn't because she feared being homeless. It was because she feared rejection. The next morning, Anita changed outfits at least 6 times. Nothing looked right. The green dress made her feel too big. The black one felt too tight. The cream-colored gown made her arms look huge. Frustrated, she sat heavily on the edge of the bed. I look terrible. Mrs. Taylor, who had been helping her prepare, sighed dramatically. You've said that about every outfit. Because it's true. No, the older woman corrected firmly. It's because cruel people repeated lies to you for years. Anita looked down quietly. Mrs. Taylor sat beside her gently. Miss Anita, Mr. Cole looks at you like you're precious. Her throat tightened immediately. That doesn't mean his parents will. Mrs. Taylor smiled knowingly. Kind men usually come from kind homes. The words stayed with Anita long after. An hour later, Adrian arrived at the apartment wearing a dark navy suit that made him look painfully handsome. The moment he saw Anita standing near the staircase, he stopped moving for half a second. She wore a deep wine-colored dress that hugged her curves beautifully without hiding them. Her curls rested softly around her shoulders, and for once she wasn't trying desperately to disappear beneath oversized clothing. She looked beautiful, warm beautiful, real beautiful, and Adrian's reaction made that immediately obvious. Anita noticed him staring. "What?" He blinked slowly. "You look stunning." Her cheeks heated instantly. "You're obligated to say that." "No," he replied calmly. "I'm distracted enough by you already. Lying would make it worse." She laughed nervously, but inside, his words melted some of her fear. Still, during the drive to his parents' estate, Anita's anxiety returned fully. The further they drove into the wealthy district, the more uncomfortable she became. Massive mansions lined the streets. Luxury cars filled long private driveways. Everything looked intimidating. Anita stared out the window quietly. "This place feels unreal." Adrian glanced at her. "You're thinking too much again. What if your parents expected someone else? They expected me to bring someone I care about. That's worse." He laughed softly. "No, it isn't." "Yes, it is." Adrian reached over and gently held her hand. Immediately, Anita's heartbeat quickened. "You know what I like most about you?" he asked quietly. "What?" "You care more about embarrassing me than protecting yourself." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "You're terrified my family might reject you." He squeezed her hand gently. "But you haven't once stopped to consider whether you'll like them." That surprised her, because he was right. She had automatically assumed she needed to earn acceptance. Like always, Adrian's thumb brushed softly across her fingers. "You're not applying for permission to exist, Anita." The sentence hit deeply. Before she could respond, the car slowed near enormous black gates. Her eyes widened. "Oh my God!" The gates opened slowly to reveal a breathtaking estate beyond. Fountains, gardens, luxury cars. A mansion so large Anita genuinely thought it looked like a hotel. Her mouth fell open slightly. "This is your parents' house?" "One of them." Anita nearly fainted. "One of them." The car finally stopped near the entrance. Before Anita could mentally prepare herself, the front doors opened. A beautiful older woman wearing an elegant cream dress hurried outside excitedly. "Oh, finally!" Anita blinked in surprise. This couldn't possibly be Adrian's mother. The woman looked too warm, too cheerful. Adrian smiled immediately. "Hi, Mom." Instead of greeting her son first, the woman looked directly at Anita, then smiled brightly. "Oh, sweetheart. You're even prettier in person." Anita froze completely. "What?" Before she could process anything, Adrian's mother pulled her gently into a hug. A real hug. Warm. Affectionate. Anita stood there completely shocked. Nobody rich had ever hugged her before. Nobody outside close family, actually. "You poor thing," the woman said softly while pulling back. "The internet pictures didn't do you justice at all." Anita opened and closed her mouth speechlessly. Thank you." Adrian looked far too entertained. "Mom, at least let her breathe first." "Oh, hush," his mother replied immediately. "I already like her more than your ex-girlfriend." "Mom." "What?" "It's true." Anita accidentally laughed. And just like that, some of the tension disappeared. Inside the mansion, things became even more surprising. Adrian's father stood near the fireplace speaking to someone on the phone. He looked serious and intimidating at first glance. Tall, commanding, and sharply dressed. Anita instantly became nervous again. The older man ended his call and turned around slowly. His eyes landed on Anita, then softened immediately. "So this is Anita." She swallowed nervously. "Good evening, sir." Instead of shaking her hand formally, he smiled warmly. My son talks about you constantly. Adrian groaned quietly. Dad. It's true. Anita looked shocked. He does. Oh yes. His father continued casually. We know all about how kind you are. Adrian rubbed a hand across his forehead. You both are making this embarrassing. His mother looked delighted. He's uncomfortable. Wonderful. Anita couldn't stop smiling now. This wasn't what she expected at all. Not even close. Dinner became even more surprising. Instead of interrogating her about money, status, or background, Adrian's parents simply talked to her like she mattered. His mother asked about her favorite books. His father asked what kind of work she enjoyed most. Nobody mocked her body. Nobody looked embarrassed by her size. Nobody acted like she didn't belong there. At one point during dinner, Anita accidentally dropped her fork. The metallic sound echoed lightly against the plate. Immediately, panic flashed across her face. I'm so sorry, but Adrian's mother simply picked up another fork calmly. Happens all the time, sweetheart. No anger, no shouting, no humiliation. Anita felt emotionally overwhelmed by how normal they treated her. Halfway through dinner, Adrian's father leaned back thoughtfully. You know, he said casually, this is the happiest I've seen Adrian in years. Adrian nearly choked on his drink. Dad. What? His mother laughed. He's right. Anita looked toward Adrian shyly. His ears actually looked slightly red now. Interesting. We were beginning to think he'd marry his office. His mother continued dramatically. I hate both of you. His parents laughed loudly. And for the first time in years, Anita found herself laughing naturally around a family dinner table. Not nervously, not carefully, naturally. Later that evening, while Anita excused herself briefly to the restroom, Adrian's mother immediately turned toward him. Oh, I adore her. Adrian tried remaining calm. You've known her 2 hours. And she's kind. His father added quietly. That made Adrian glance toward him. His father rarely commented emotionally about people. But now the older man continued thoughtfully. She watches everyone before speaking. Adrian nodded slightly. She's used to being judged. Pain crossed his mother's face instantly. That poor girl. She's been through a lot. His mother looked toward the hallway Anita disappeared into. You know what I noticed first? What? She apologizes constantly. Adrian sighed quietly. Yeah. That usually means someone punished her harshly for existing. The truth of that statement settled heavily over the room. Then his father spoke again. But she also has strength. Adrian looked surprised. She does. The older man nodded. People who survive cruelty without becoming cruel themselves are very rare. Silence followed briefly. Then Adrian's mother smiled softly. She loves you already, you know? Adrian's eyes shifted toward the hallway instinctively. His chest tightened slightly, because deep down, he already knew that too. A little while later, Anita stood alone near one of the giant balcony windows overlooking the gardens outside. The night air felt cool against her skin. Behind her, laughter echoed faintly from inside the mansion. Warm laughter, family laughter, something she hadn't experienced properly since losing her parents. You okay? Adrian's voice came softly behind her. She turned slowly, then smiled. They're wonderful. His shoulders relaxed immediately. I told you. Anita shook her head softly. I kept waiting for the moment everything would change. What moment? The moment they'd realize I don't belong here. Adrian stepped closer. And did it happen? She looked toward the glowing mansion behind him, then back at him. No. Emotion filled her chest suddenly. Unexpectedly. Powerfully. I forgot families could feel like this. The sadness in her voice hit Adrian deeply. He moved closer until only inches separated them. You deserve this too, Anita. Her eyes watered instantly. Your mother hugged me. He smiled faintly. She hugs everybody she loves. The word settled heavily between them. Loves. Anita's breath caught slightly. Then Adrian gently brushed a curl away from her face. You know what my father said when you left the room? What? He said you protect other people's feelings even when you're hurting. Tears filled her eyes again immediately. Why are you all so kind to me? Adrian's expression softened deeply. Because you spent too long around people who weren't. And standing there beneath the soft balcony lights, with the billionaire looking at her like she was something precious, Anita felt her heart fall completely in love with him. 3 weeks after meeting Adrian's parents, Anita's life felt almost unrecognizable. Every morning she woke up peacefully instead of fearfully. Nobody screamed her name angrily before sunrise. Nobody insulted her body during breakfast. Nobody treated her like a burden taking up space. And perhaps the strangest part of all, people actually cared whether she was happy. The realization still overwhelmed her sometimes, especially on quiet nights. Like tonight, Anita stood in front of the large bedroom mirror inside the apartment, slowly removing her earrings after returning from dinner with Adrian's family. For a moment, she simply stared at her reflection. The woman in the mirror looked softer now, happier, not because her body changed. It hadn't, but because the sadness crushing her spirit for years had finally started lifting. Still, some scars remained too deep to disappear easily. Anita gently touched her own cheek, remembering the slap Uncle Benson gave her the night he threw her out. Her expression dimmed immediately. She still had nightmares sometimes. Dreams where she stood outside in the rain again while the gate slammed shut in front of her. Dreams where everyone laughed at her. Dreams where Adrian eventually realized she wasn't enough and left too. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." The bedroom door opened slowly. Adrian stepped inside wearing black sweatpants and a simple t-shirt, yet somehow still looking unfairly attractive. The moment he saw her face, his expression changed slightly. "You're thinking again." Anita sighed softly. "Is it that obvious now?" "Yes." He walked closer. "What happened?" "Nothing." "That's your lying voice." A small smile tugged at Anita's lips despite herself. "You know me too well already." Adrian stopped directly in front of her. "That's because you wear every emotion on your face." She looked down quietly. "I was just remembering things." His eyes softened immediately. "Your uncle." She nodded slowly. Silence filled the room briefly. Adrian hated hearing about the people who hurt her. Not because he pitied Anita, but because every cruel story explained another insecurity she carried. Why she apologized constantly. Why compliments made her emotional. Why she panicked over small mistakes. Sometimes Adrian wanted to drive to her uncle's house immediately and confront him. But he knew Anita wasn't ready for that. At least not yet. Then suddenly, a thought crossed his mind. And slowly, a very dangerous smile appeared on his face. Anita narrowed her eyes immediately. "That smile means trouble." "Not trouble." "Yes, trouble." Adrian laughed softly. "Okay, maybe a little." She folded her arms suspiciously. "What are you thinking?" Instead of answering immediately, Adrian sat casually on the edge of the bed. Then he looked up at her. "Do you want to visit your uncle?" Anita froze completely. The air left her lungs instantly. "What?" "I'm serious." Her heartbeat quickened nervously. "Why would I ever want to do that?" Adrian leaned back slightly. "Because some people deserve to see the consequences of how they treated others." Anita stared at him speechlessly. "No, no, no." She shook her head quickly. "I don't want to see that house again." Pain flickered briefly across her face. "I don't even want to remember it." Adrian's expression softened. "I understand." "Then why bring it up?" "Because," he said carefully, "you still sound afraid whenever you talk about them." Anita immediately looked away. "I'm not afraid." "Yes, you are." The honesty in his voice irritated her slightly. "You think I'm weak?" "What?" Adrian frowned immediately. "No." "Then why do you keep acting like I need revenge?" He stood and walked closer again. "This isn't about revenge." "Then what is it about?" Adrian's eyes held hers steadily. "It's about you finally understanding your worth." The words hit harder than she expected. Anita swallowed quietly. "You already escaped that life," Adrian continued softly. But emotionally, part of you still lives there. Her throat tightened instantly, because deep down, she knew he was right. Even now, she still flinched whenever people raised their voices suddenly, still apologized for tiny things, still felt ashamed whenever she ate too much around others, still expected kindness to disappear eventually. Her uncle's cruelty still lived inside her mind. Adrian gently touched her hand. I'm not asking you to fight anybody. Then what are you asking? A slow smile appeared on his face again. I'm asking you to arrive happy. Anita blinked in confusion. What does that mean? You'll see. That answer did not comfort her at all. The next morning, Anita discovered Adrian had already started planning something enormous. She walked downstairs to find Mrs. Taylor speaking excitedly with two stylists while several garment bags hung nearby. Anita stopped immediately. What is all this? Mrs. Taylor smiled brightly. Preparation. For what? Before anyone answered, Adrian entered holding coffee casually. For Saturday. What happens Saturday? Adrian handed her coffee calmly. We're visiting your uncle. Anita nearly dropped the cup. You were serious? Very. No. Yes. Adrian. He looked completely unbothered. You're overreacting. I am absolutely not overreacting. The stylists quietly pretended not to listen. Anita lowered her voice. I don't want people staring at me. That's unfortunate, Adrian replied calmly. Because they definitely will. She stared at him in disbelief. You planned this already? Partially. Without asking me properly? I knew you'd panic first. That's because this is insane. Adrian chuckled softly. Then suddenly he became serious. Anita. The gentleness in his tone immediately quieted her. I need you to trust me. She hesitated. I do trust you. Then let me do this for you. Her eyes searched his carefully. For me? Yes. He stepped closer. You spent years being treated like you were worthless. Pain flickered across her face again. And now I want the people who caused that pain to see exactly who you became despite them. Emotion rose unexpectedly inside Anita's chest. She looked away quickly. That sounds dramatic. Adrian smiled slightly. It is dramatic. She laughed weakly despite herself. Then sighed heavily. This is going to attract attention. Good. Adrian. No. He interrupted softly. I'm serious. His expression hardened slightly now. The people who humiliated you publicly should watch you return publicly. Something deep inside Anita stirred emotionally. Not pride exactly. Something unfamiliar. Something dangerously close to confidence. Still, fear remained stronger. What if they insult me again? Adrian's entire face changed instantly. Cold anger flashed briefly across his eyes. They won't. The certainty in his voice made her heart skip slightly. Later that afternoon, preparations continued aggressively. And to Anita's horror, Adrian's parents became involved too. His mother nearly squealed with excitement when she heard the plan. Oh, I'm absolutely coming. Anita looked horrified. No, you don't understand how embarrassing this is. Nonsense. His mother replied immediately. If someone mistreated my future daughter-in-law, I want to see his face personally. Anita blinked rapidly. Future daughter-in-law. The phrase still affected her every time. Adrian's father looked calmer but equally supportive. That man should know exactly what he lost. Anita felt overwhelmed emotionally. Nobody had ever defended her like this before. Nobody. Not teachers. Not neighbors. Not relatives. But now this wealthy, powerful family spoke about protecting her like it was the most natural thing in the world. That realization nearly made her cry. Unfortunately, Adrian's mother noticed immediately. Oh, sweetheart. Anita quickly wiped her eyes. I'm fine. No, you're not. The older woman stood and hugged her tightly. You're just finally receiving the love you always deserved. And just like that, the tears came anyway. By Thursday evening, the entire plan had become terrifyingly extravagant. Luxury cars were booked. Security escorts arranged. Stylists scheduled. Adrian even planned a professional photographer for memories. Anita nearly fainted hearing that part. Absolutely not. Adrian looked amused. What? You're turning this into a movie premiere? Good idea, he replied thoughtfully. Maybe drones too. Adrian. He laughed loudly while Anita threw a pillow at him. Watching her slowly become more expressive and playful healed something inside him too. The frightened woman who once apologized for breathing too loudly was finally beginning to fight back a little. Even if only with him. Friday night arrived faster than Anita wanted. She sat nervously while a stylist curled her hair gently. What if this goes badly? She whispered. Mrs. Taylor smiled knowingly from nearby. Then Mr. Cole will probably buy the entire neighborhood out of anger. Anita accidentally laughed. That image honestly sounded believable. A few moments later, Adrian entered the room wearing a fitted black suit, and immediately stopped walking. The stylist stepped aside proudly. Anita looked breathtaking. Her deep emerald gown complemented her curves beautifully. Her makeup remained soft and elegant, enhancing rather than hiding her natural features. But more than anything, she looked radiant, not because of expensive clothes, because happiness had finally started reaching her eyes. Adrian stared openly for several seconds. Anita became shy immediately. What? He shook his head slowly. You really have no idea how beautiful you are. Her cheeks warmed. You say things like that too casually. That wasn't casual. His voice dropped slightly softer. That was me struggling not to stare. The stylist grinned knowingly while Anita looked away embarrassed. God, this man truly meant every compliment he gave her. And somehow that remained the most shocking thing of all. Later that night, after everyone else left, Anita stood quietly on the balcony, unable to sleep. Tomorrow felt huge, terrifyingly huge. She heard footsteps behind her moments before Adrian wrapped his arms gently around her waist from behind. You disappeared. I'm nervous. I know. She leaned back slightly against his chest. What if seeing them ruins everything? It won't. How can you be sure? Because you're not the same Anita anymore. The city lights glowed around them softly. Anita looked down quietly. What if I still feel small in front of them? Adrian turned her gently until she faced him. Then he held both her hands carefully. Listen to me. His voice became soft but firm. You survived people who spent years trying to destroy your confidence. Emotion filled her eyes immediately. And despite all of it, he squeezed her hands gently. You remained loving. A tear slid slowly down Anita's cheek. Adrian brushed it away softly. That is strength, Anita. Her breathing trembled slightly. You don't see yourself clearly yet, he whispered. But one day you will. For several seconds they simply stood there together beneath the night sky. Then Anita suddenly asked quietly, Why do you love me so much? The question caught him off guard. Adrian stared at her for a moment before answering honestly. Because you taught me something important. What? That the softest people often survive the hardest lives. Tears filled her eyes completely now. And at that moment, Anita realized something powerful. For years, her uncle made her feel impossible to love. But now, a man looked at her like she was the best thing that ever happened to him. And maybe, just maybe, that was the greatest victory of all. Saturday morning arrived far too quickly for Anita's liking. By 7 a.m., she was already awake, sitting nervously at the edge of her bed, while staring at the soft sunlight filtering through the curtains. Her stomach twisted painfully. Today was the day. Today she would return to the neighborhood she once walked out of crying in the rain. The thought alone made her chest tighten. For several minutes, Anita simply sat there quietly hugging herself. Memories flooded her mind one after another. Uncle Benson screaming at her. Her cousins laughing cruelly. The neighbors watching silently while she got thrown out like garbage. Even now, remembering that night still hurt deeply. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. Miss Anita? Mrs. Taylor called softly. May I come in? Anita quickly wiped her eyes before answering. Yes. The older woman entered carrying breakfast on a tray. Thought you should eat something before today. Anita gave a weak smile. Thank you. Mrs. Taylor sat beside her gently. You barely slept, did you? Anita sighed quietly. Is it obvious? Yes. The older woman hesitated briefly. Still scared. Anita looked down at her hands. A little. A little. Mrs. Taylor laughed softly. Sweetheart, you look like you're preparing for war. That unexpectedly made Anita smile. Then the smile faded again. What if seeing them brings everything back? Mrs. Taylor's expression softened. It might. Anita swallowed hard. That's what scares me. The older woman gently touched her shoulder. But this time you won't be facing them alone. Those words comforted her more than she expected. An hour later, the apartment transformed into complete chaos. Stylists moved around carrying makeup kits and garment bags, while security personnel coordinated downstairs. Even Adrian's mother arrived early, excited beyond reason. This is going to be iconic, she declared dramatically while sipping coffee. Adrian's father sighed. You sound far too happy about intimidating strangers. They bullied Anita, his wife replied immediately. I hope they panic. Anita nearly choked on air. Meanwhile, Adrian entered the room already dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. The moment his eyes landed on Anita, he slowed down slightly. She sat near the vanity mirror, her curls framed her face beautifully, and her makeup remained soft enough to highlight her natural warmth rather than hide it. But despite how beautiful she looked, Adrian immediately noticed the nervousness in her eyes. He walked toward her slowly. Hey! Anita looked up quietly. Hey! You okay? She hesitated. No. Adrian crouched slightly beside her chair. You want to cancel? The question surprised her. You'd let me? Of course. His answer came instantly. Anita stared at him carefully. That was one thing she loved most about Adrian. He never pressured her emotionally, never forced strength onto her. He simply stood beside her until she found it herself. After a long moment, Anita slowly shook her head. No. You sure? She took a deep breath. Yes. Then more quietly, I think I need to do this. A soft smile appeared on Adrian's face. There she is. Anita looked confused. What? The strong woman I keep telling you about. Her cheeks warmed slightly. About 2 hours later, the convoy finally left Adrian's estate. And to Anita's horror, it was even more excessive than she imagined. 5 luxury vehicles, 2 black security SUVs, a sleek Rolls-Royce carrying Adrian and Anita, and another luxury car carrying Adrian's parents. People openly stared everywhere they passed. Some even took pictures. Anita sat stiffly beside Adrian inside the Rolls-Royce while trying not to panic. This is too much. Adrian looked amused. No, this is exactly enough. You're enjoying this. A little. A little? She repeated incredulously. You should have seen your face when you saw the convoy. Anita covered her eyes dramatically. I'm going to die today. No, you're not. You don't understand where we're going. Adrian's expression softened slightly. You're right. He reached over and gently held her hand. I don't. His thumb brushed softly across her fingers. But I understand one thing. What? You deserved better than what they gave you. Emotion tightened in Anita's throat immediately. The city slowly changed outside the windows as they drove farther away from wealthy neighborhoods. Tall buildings disappeared. Roads became rougher. Familiar streets slowly returned. And suddenly, Anita's breathing changed. Adrian noticed instantly. You okay? She stared silently out the window. That store, she whispered softly. What about it? I used to buy bread there sometimes after my uncle refused to feed me. Pain flickered across Adrian's face immediately. A few streets later, Anita saw the small church she once attended as a teenager. Then the old roadside shop where neighborhood women used to gossip about her body whenever she walked by. Everything returned at once. Every humiliation, every lonely walk home, every insult. Her hands began trembling slightly. Adrian squeezed them gently. Look at me. Slowly, Anita turned toward him. You are not that helpless girl anymore. Tears gathered in her eyes instantly. Adrian's voice became softer. You survived them. She nodded weakly. Then finally, the convoy entered her old street, and chaos erupted immediately. Children began running after the luxury cars, screaming excitedly. Neighbors rushed outside their houses in confusion. Women abandoned conversations halfway. Men stood up from roadside chairs instantly. Nobody in the neighborhood had ever seen so many expensive cars enter the street before. What is happening? Who is that? Is it a politician? No, that's Adrian Cole. The shouting grew louder. Phones appeared everywhere. People crowded both sides of the street, staring in disbelief. Inside the Rolls-Royce, Anita's heartbeat pounded violently. This didn't feel real. The same neighborhood that once ignored her suffering now stared at her convoy like royalty had arrived. The cars finally slowed near Uncle Benson's compound. And suddenly, everything became quiet. Anita stared through the window at the exact gate where her life once fell apart. The memories hit so hard her chest physically hurt. Rain, mud, her bag thrown outside, the gate slamming shut. For a second, she couldn't breathe properly. Adrian noticed immediately. Hey! She looked toward him slowly. You don't have to get out if you're not ready. Anita stared at the gate again. Then something unexpected happened. The gate opened, and Uncle Benson stepped outside. At first he looked annoyed by the noise gathering outside, then confused by the luxury cars, then curious, and finally, completely frozen, because the back door of the Rolls-Royce opened slowly, and Anita stepped out. The entire street gasped loudly. Uncle Benson's eyes widened so much he looked physically ill. Anita! Even saying her name sounded unbelievable to him. She looked nothing like the broken crying girl he threw away months ago. The woman standing before him looked elegant, confident, beautiful, loved. The expensive gown shimmered softly beneath the sunlight while her curls framed her face perfectly. And standing beside her was one of the richest men in the country. Adrian stepped out calmly, adjusting his suit slightly while security personnel stood nearby. More gasps erupted immediately. Then Adrian's parents emerged from the second luxury car. The neighborhood nearly exploded with whispers. That's Adrian Cole's family. Oh my God! Look at those cars! Uncle Benson looked completely disoriented now. His wife suddenly appeared behind him. The moment she saw Anita, her mouth dropped open. No way! The same woman who once mocked Anita daily now stared at her like she had seen a ghost. More neighbors gathered rapidly. Some recognized Anita immediately. Others looked confused. Then whispers spread. That's the orphan he threw out. The fat girl. Impossible. But look at her now. Anita felt overwhelmed by all the attention. Instinctively, she moved slightly closer to Adrian. Immediately, his hand found hers. Warm, steady, protective. That tiny gesture gave her strength. Uncle Benson finally found his voice. What is all this? Adrian looked calm, controlled, powerful. This, he replied smoothly, is a visit. The older man swallowed nervously. His eyes moved toward the expensive convoy again, toward the security guards, toward the watching crowd. For the first time in years, Uncle Benson looked intimidated. Anita noticed immediately, and strangely, that realization changed something inside her. Because all her life, she remembered him as loud, cruel, untouchable. But now, he looked small, very small. Adrian's mother stepped beside Anita proudly. She's lovely, isn't she? She said loudly enough for nearby neighbors to hear. Several women exchanged stunned looks. Nobody had ever publicly praised Anita before. Not here. Not ever. Uncle Benson cleared his throat awkwardly. Anita, you came back. The sentence sounded almost accusing. Anita looked at him quietly for several seconds, then answered softly, yes. Her calmness somehow unsettled him more than anger would have. The crowd surrounding the compound continued growing larger. Children whispered excitedly, while women openly stared at Anita's dress and jewelry. Even Cynthia and her sister eventually rushed outside after hearing the commotion. The moment Cynthia saw Adrian standing beside Anita, her face lost color completely. "No way," she whispered. Her sister looked equally shocked. "That's Adrian Cole." Cynthia stared at Anita from head to toe. Jealousy flashed visibly across her face. The same cousin who once mocked Anita's appearance now couldn't stop staring at how radiant she looked. Life truly changed fast. Uncle Benson forced an awkward smile. "You should have told us you were coming." Adrian finally spoke again. "We wanted it to be memorable." The older man laughed nervously. Yes, of course." But his hands shook slightly, because deep down, he already sensed this visit was not ordinary. And when Adrian suddenly wrapped an arm gently around Anita's waist while standing proudly beside her, the entire neighborhood understood something shocking immediately. The billionaire wasn't helping Anita out of pity. He loved her, completely, openly. And suddenly the same people who once ignored her pain began looking at her with astonishment instead. Anita noticed every expression, every whisper, every shocked face, and standing there beside the man who chose her proudly in front of everyone, she finally stopped feeling ashamed of taking up space. The entire street stood frozen in disbelief. Nobody could fully process what they were witnessing. The same Anita who once walked through the neighborhood with her head lowered in shame now stood beside billionaire Adrian Cole wearing elegance and confidence like she had always belonged there. Luxury cars lined the road behind her. Security guards stood nearby. And the most shocking part of all, Adrian looked at her like she was the center of his world. Uncle Benson's face had completely lost color. His wife looked equally shaken. Even Cynthia and her sister, who once mocked Anita endlessly, now stood silently among the crowd staring at her in stunned disbelief. Whispers spread rapidly through the neighborhood. "That's really her? She looks completely different. Look at how rich that man is. God has remembered her." Anita heard everything. But strangely, for the first time in her life, the attention no longer made her feel ashamed. Because Adrian's hand still rested gently against her waist. Steady, protective, like he wanted the entire world to know exactly where he stood. Uncle Benson cleared his throat nervously. "So," he forced awkwardly, "what brings all of you here?" Adrian's expression remained calm. "We came to speak respectfully." The older man nodded quickly. "Yes, of course. Please come inside." His sudden politeness almost felt laughable. Anita remembered all the times visitors came to the house and her uncle introduced her coldly as the orphan staying with us. Not niece, not family, just burden. Now suddenly his tone dripped with nervous respect. Interesting. Adrian's mother glanced around the compound thoughtfully while Anita slowly stepped through the gate for the first time since being thrown out. The moment her feet crossed the entrance, memories crashed into her violently. Sweeping the yard before sunrise, washing piles of clothes until her fingers hurt, carrying buckets of water, crying alone behind the house where nobody could hear her. Everything still looked the same, but she didn't feel the same anymore. That realization startled her deeply. Inside the compound, neighbors crowded near the gate shamelessly trying to watch everything. Even people from nearby streets had started arriving after hearing Adrian Cole's name. Children climbed fences. Women whispered excitedly. Phones recorded secretly everywhere. Uncle Benson looked deeply uncomfortable under all the attention. "Please sit," he said quickly while dragging chairs around nervously. Adrian remained standing beside Anita. "We won't stay long." The older man swallowed hard. Then his eyes slowly moved toward Anita again. For a moment he simply stared. Really stared. And perhaps for the first time ever, he truly saw her. Not the exhausted servant girl he insulted daily. Not the fat burden he mocked. But a woman. Beautiful. Graceful. Desired. Respected. Loved. The realization clearly unsettled him badly. Finally, Adrian spoke calmly. "I came because I intend to marry Anita." The sentence exploded through the compound like thunder. Gasps erupted immediately outside the gate. Cynthia's mouth fell open. Her sister nearly dropped her phone. Even Uncle Benson physically staggered backward. Am Mary? Yes. The older man blinked repeatedly like his brain refused to process the information. You want to marry Anita? The disbelief in his voice cut deeply, and everyone heard it. Anita felt humiliation flicker briefly inside her chest. Even now, part of him still couldn't imagine someone loving her fully. Before she could react emotionally, Adrian answered coldly. Yes. Is that surprising? Silence. Dangerous silence. Uncle Benson realized his mistake instantly. No, I didn't mean. You sounded surprised. Adrian interrupted smoothly. Sweat appeared on the older man's forehead immediately. Adrian's eyes remained calm. Too calm. I find that interesting, he continued quietly, because Anita is one of the most remarkable women I've ever met. Emotion tightened inside Anita's chest. She is intelligent, Adrian continued. Kind, patient, hard-working. His voice hardened slightly. And after learning how she was treated here, honestly, I'm amazed she remained such a good person. The compound became painfully quiet. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because everybody knew exactly what he was implying. Uncle Benson looked trapped now. Cornered. His wife suddenly stepped forward nervously. We took care of her after her parents died. Adrian looked at her. Took care of her? The woman hesitated immediately. Yes. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly. Throwing her into the street during heavy rain is your definition of care? The crowd outside gasped loudly. People started whispering faster now. You threw her out in rain? That wicked man. I remember that night. Uncle Benson's panic visibly increased. No, it wasn't like that. Anita stared at him quietly. Not angry, just watching. And somehow her silence affected him more than shouting would have. Adrian stepped slightly closer now. She told me everything. The older man looked horrified. Every insult, every slap, every humiliation, every cruel comment about her body. Everything. Uncle Benson suddenly looked much older than before. Smaller too, because for years he held power over Anita through fear. But now, that power was gone. Completely gone. Adrian's mother folded her arms tightly. You mocked this girl's appearance while destroying her confidence, she said sharply. His wife immediately lowered her eyes. Adrian's father spoke next, his deep voice calm but firm. Do you understand how broken someone must feel before they apologize for existing? That sentence hit Anita unexpectedly hard. Because it was true. She apologized constantly. For eating. For talking. For taking up space. And she never fully realized how abnormal that was until Adrian's family showed her otherwise. Tears suddenly burned her eyes. Uncle Benson noticed immediately. And something inside him finally cracked. Without warning, the older man dropped to his knees. Gasps exploded across the compound. Anita, forgive me. The entire neighborhood went silent instantly. Nobody expected that. Nobody. Uncle Benson looked completely shattered now. I was wrong, he cried desperately. His wife quickly knelt beside him too. We treated you badly. Please forgive us. Cynthia stared in horror. Her powerful father, the man everyone feared in the neighborhood, now knelt before the same cousin he once humiliated daily. Anita stood frozen. Emotion crashed violently inside her chest, because suddenly memories flooded back faster than she could control. Being denied food, crying herself to sleep quietly, wearing old torn clothes while her cousins mocked her, watching other girls her age feel loved while she felt invisible. All those years, all that pain, and now the people who caused it knelt before her publicly. The younger version of Anita would have dreamed about this moment, dreamed about revenge, dreamed about humiliating them back. But standing here now, she didn't feel powerful. She felt sad, deeply sad, because no child should grow up begging relatives to love them properly. Uncle Benson grabbed her hand desperately. Please, Anita. Tears streamed down his face now. I know I failed you. The crowd watched silently. Even Adrian remained quiet now, letting Anita choose her response herself. For several long seconds, She simply stared at the man kneeling before her, then quietly asked, "Why?" Uncle Benson looked confused. What? Why did you hate me so much?" The question pierced the entire compound painfully. His lips trembled. "I didn't hate you." Anita laughed softly through tears. "Yes, you did. No. You looked at me like I was a burden every single day." Her voice shook emotionally now. "You made me feel ugly, unwanted, worthless." Even Cynthia lowered her head in shame. Anita's breathing became uneven. "I was just a child after my parents died." The pain in her voice broke something inside several people watching. And instead of helping me heal, a tear slid slowly down her cheek. "You made me feel like my existence ruined your life." Silence. Heavy silence. Uncle Benson cried openly now. "I was angry," he whispered weakly. "At what?" "Life." His answer surprised everyone. He lowered his head completely. "Your father was successful, respected, loved." Anita stared silently. "And after he died," Uncle Benson continued painfully, "people compared me to him constantly." Understanding slowly dawned inside Anita. Jealousy. All these years, jealousy poisoned him. "I took that frustration out on you," he admitted brokenly. His wife looked ashamed too. "We should have protected you better." Anita closed her eyes briefly. For years she imagined confronting them angrily. But now that the moment finally came, she simply felt tired. Tired of carrying pain. Tired of carrying shame that never belonged to her. Slowly, she opened her eyes again, then softly said, "I forgive you." The entire compound gasped. Even Adrian looked surprised. Cynthia burst into tears immediately. Uncle Benson stared upward in shock. "You forgive me?" Anita nodded slowly. "Yes." More tears rolled down his face. But then Anita continued quietly, "Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened." The older man lowered his head again. "I know. You cannot undo years of pain. I know. You cannot undo making me hate myself." That sentence visibly shattered him. Anita wiped her own tears carefully. "But I don't want bitterness controlling my life anymore." The crowd remained silent, listening carefully, because something powerful was happening. Anita slowly looked around the neighborhood, at the same people who once watched her suffer silently, then back at her uncle. "I used to think being unloved meant something was wrong with me." Emotion thickened her voice. "But Adrian taught me something important." She glanced toward him briefly. "Cruel people hurt others because something is broken inside them, not because their victims are worthless." Adrian's chest tightened hearing her say that, because months ago, Anita would never have spoken with such confidence. Never. Uncle Benson cried harder now. "I'm sorry," he whispered repeatedly. "I know," Anita answered softly, and strangely, she meant it, not because the past stopped hurting, but because she no longer needed their approval to feel valuable. That changed everything. Suddenly Adrian stepped beside her again, gently holding her hand. Then he looked directly at Uncle Benson. "I love Anita deeply." The older man nodded immediately through tears. "I can see that. And I intend to spend the rest of my life reminding her how worthy she always was." Anita's breath caught emotionally. Adrian's mother wiped tears quietly nearby. Even some neighbors looked emotional now, because everybody could see it clearly. This wasn't pity. This wasn't temporary fascination. The billionaire genuinely adored her. And for the first time ever, Anita fully believed she deserved that love too. After the visit to her uncle's house, something inside Anita changed permanently. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like chains finally loosening after years of carrying invisible weight. For the first time in her life, she no longer felt ashamed of herself. The feeling was still unfamiliar, still fragile, but it was there, and Adrian noticed immediately. 3 days after their visit to the neighborhood, Anita stood inside the company elevator checking her reflection in the mirrored wall absent-mindedly. A few months ago, mirrors only reminded her of everything people mocked about her. Now, she simply saw herself. Not perfect, not transformed into someone else. Just Anita. And somehow that finally felt enough. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor. Adrian leaned casually against the reception desk, waiting for her with coffee in one hand. The receptionist smiled knowingly. At this point, everyone in the company openly admitted the billionaire was hopelessly in love. Anita raised an eyebrow. "You're stalking me at work now?" Adrian handed her coffee calmly. "I own the building. Technically, you're the trespasser." She laughed softly. God, he loved that sound. Especially because months ago, hearing her laugh was rare. Now it happened naturally, frequently, beautifully. As they walked together toward his office, employees greeted Anita warmly. Not awkwardly anymore. Not with hidden judgment. Somehow, Anita's kindness had slowly won people over. She remembered birthdays, helped overwhelmed interns, treated cleaners respectfully, brought food for staff during stressful workdays. And over time, people stopped seeing the overweight woman dating the billionaire. They simply saw Anita. That meant more to her than anyone realized. Inside Adrian's office, Anita sat across from him while reviewing project schedules. Or at least pretending to, because Adrian kept staring at her. Finally, she looked up suspiciously. "What?" "Nothing. You're doing that thing again." "What thing?" "The staring thing." Adrian smirked slightly. "I'm allowed to admire my girlfriend." Her cheeks warmed instantly. Even now, hearing him call her that affected her deeply. Girlfriend. Not secret. Not embarrassment. Not pity. His openly. Still, Anita narrowed her eyes playfully. "You're distracting me." "You were already distracted." "That's because somebody keeps staring at me like I'm a painting." "You're prettier than most paintings." Anita groaned dramatically. "You flirt too much." Adrian leaned back comfortably. "And you blush too easily." She tried hiding her smile behind the coffee cup. But inside, happiness bloomed warmly in her chest. Real happiness. The kind she once believed belonged only to other people. Later that evening, Adrian's mother invited them for dinner again. And once more, Anita found herself laughing naturally at a family table. Something that still felt surreal. At one point during dinner, Adrian's mother suddenly sighed dramatically. "What?" Adrian asked cautiously. "I just realized something tragic." His father immediately looked tired already. "Here we go. You still haven't proposed." Anita nearly inhaled water wrong. "Mom." "What?" The older woman replied innocently. "I'm just saying." Adrian rubbed his forehead. "You're embarrassing everyone." "No," his father corrected calmly. "Only you." Anita laughed so hard she almost cried. Watching Adrian become flustered remained one of her favorite things. Mostly because he always looked so calm and controlled around everyone else. But around family? Different story entirely. His mother pointed at him accusingly. "That girl adores you. Stop delaying." "Mother, I'm serious." Anita quickly waved her hands nervously. "No pressure." "Really?" Unfortunately, that only made Adrian's mother grin wider. "Oh, sweetheart, you're definitely the one." Anita blinked. "The one?" "Yes, Adrian hates emotional vulnerability. The fact that he looks at you like that means he's finished." "Mom!" Even Anita couldn't stop laughing now. But despite the joking atmosphere, something shifted quietly inside Adrian. Because hearing the word proposal didn't scare him. Not even slightly. If anything, felt right. That realization stayed with him long after dinner ended. Later that night, Adrian stood alone inside his office at home, staring thoughtfully out the window. The city lights stretched endlessly below. Normally moments like this made him think about business expansions, investments, or future deals. Tonight, he only thought about Anita, the frightened woman he found crying at a bus stop. The same woman who now smiled more freely every day. The same woman who somehow healed parts of him too. Because before Anita, Adrian honestly believed most relationships were transactional. Conditional. Temporary. People wanted access to his money, influence, or lifestyle. But Anita wanted him. Not his wealth. Not his status. him. And suddenly, the decision became incredibly simple. He reached for his phone immediately. Daniel, his best friend, answered sleepily. If this call isn't about someone dying, I hate you. I'm proposing. Silence. Then suddenly, wait, what? Adrian laughed quietly. I need help planning it. Daniel became fully awake instantly. Oh, this is historic. Over the next week, preparations began secretly, and Adrian became surprisingly nervous, which absolutely delighted everyone around him, especially his mother. You're pacing, she observed smugly one afternoon. I am not. You've walked past this window 6 times. Adrian sighed heavily. What if she panics? His mother looked horrified. Of course she'll panic. That's the point. That's not reassuring. The older woman softened slightly. She loves you, Adrian. I know. And you love her. His expression softened immediately. Yeah. His mother smiled warmly. Then stop overthinking. But overthinking became impossible not to do, because this mattered. Deeply. More deeply than anything else ever had. Meanwhile, Anita remained completely unaware, though she did notice Adrian acting strangely. He disappeared for mysterious meetings. Whispered conversations stopped whenever she entered rooms. And once she accidentally caught Adrian's mother looking at her with suspicious emotional excitement. Anita narrowed her eyes immediately. What are you planning? The older woman gasped dramatically. I would never. That was the most guilty response possible. Mrs. Taylor immediately escaped the room laughing. Definitely suspicious. 2 nights later, Adrian invited Anita out unexpectedly. Dress comfortably, he told her mysteriously. Comfortably where? You ask too many questions. That's because you're acting suspicious. He simply smiled, which made her even more suspicious. An hour later, they drove outside the city quietly while soft music played inside the car. Anita glanced out the window curiously. Where are we going? You'll see. Adrian. No clues. She sighed dramatically. If I get kidnapped, this conversation becomes evidence. He laughed loudly. God, he loved her humor. Eventually the car stopped near a breathtaking private garden estate just outside the city. Anita blinked in surprise. This place is beautiful. Soft golden lights decorated the pathways while flowers surrounded the entire area. Gentle music floated through the night air as lanterns glowed around a nearby lake. The entire place looked magical. Anita turned slowly in awe. Adrian. Then she noticed something strange. Nobody else was around. No guests. No staff. Just them. Her heartbeat changed instantly. What is this? Adrian suddenly looked nervous. Actually nervous. That alone terrified her slightly. Walk with me. She nodded slowly. Together they followed the flower-lined pathway quietly. The night air felt cool and peaceful around them. For several moments neither spoke. Then Adrian finally broke the silence. You know, he said softly, the night I met you, I almost didn't stop the car. Anita looked at him quietly. What changed your mind? He smiled faintly. You looked lonely. Emotion flickered across her face immediately. Adrian continued slowly. And something about that bothered me. They reached the center garden where fairy lights glowed softly above them like stars. Anita's heart now pounded hard enough to hurt. Adrian. He turned toward her fully. And suddenly, everything became still. I spent years believing success solved loneliness, he admitted quietly. But then I met you. Anita's eyes softened immediately. You changed things for me too. He stepped closer. No, Anita. You changed everything. Tears already threatened her eyes, because his voice sounded emotional. Deeply emotional. You walked into my life carrying pain most people would never survive. His eyes held hers steadily. And somehow, despite all of it, he smiled softly. You remained gentle. A tear slid slowly down Anita's cheek. You made me believe love could actually feel peaceful. Her breathing trembled. You made my house feel like home. Another tear escaped. And every day since meeting you, Adrian's voice softened further. I've become more certain of one thing. Before Anita could speak, he slowly dropped to one knee. Her entire body froze instantly. Oh my God! Adrian reached into his pocket carefully, then opened a small velvet ring box. Inside rested the most beautiful diamond ring Anita had ever seen. She covered her mouth immediately. Tears poured down her cheeks now. Adrian, I don't care about perfect appearances, he said quietly. I don't care about what people expect. His eyes never left hers. I care about you. Anita shook emotionally. I care about your heart, your kindness, your strength. His voice deepened softly. And I want to spend the rest of my life protecting the woman who healed mine. Anita cried openly now. Hard. Because no matter how much happiness entered her life, part of her still never imagined this could happen to someone like her. Adrian smiled gently through his own emotion. Anita Williams. The night air felt magical around them. The flowers, the lights, the man kneeling before her with complete love in his eyes. Will you marry me? Anita burst into tears completely. Yes. Adrian laughed softly in relief. Yes. Yes. He quickly slipped the ring onto her finger while standing again immediately afterward. The second he pulled her into his arms, fireworks exploded across the night sky. Anita gasped loudly in shock. What? Adrian grinned against her hair. A little dramatic? A little? She laughed through tears while fireworks illuminated the sky above them beautifully. Then suddenly she pulled back slightly, staring at him emotionally. You really want forever with me? The question shattered him slightly inside. Because even now, even after everything, part of her still struggled believing she was worthy of permanent love. Adrian gently held her face. Anita. His voice became firm with emotion. I have never been more sure about anything in my life. Fresh tears filled her eyes again. Then finally, she kissed him. Softly, deeply, completely. And standing there beneath fireworks and stars, the orphan once made to feel impossible to love finally realized something extraordinary. She was someone's greatest dream come true. The news spread across the country within hours. Billionaire Adrian Cole was getting married. And not to a model, not to an actress, not to a wealthy politician's daughter, but to Anita Williams, the plus-sized orphan girl nobody expected him to choose. Social media exploded instantly. News blogs posted endless headlines. Love beyond status. Adrian Cole set to marry the woman who stole his heart. From homeless to future billionaire's wife. Some people celebrated the story passionately. Others remained cruel. She's lucky. He could do better. This can't last. But this time, the comments didn't destroy Anita anymore. Because every night Adrian still looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. And slowly, that became louder than strangers' opinions. Wedding preparations consumed the next 2 months completely. Designers arrived constantly. Florists visited daily. Event planners nearly lived inside Adrian's mansion. His mother treated the entire wedding like a royal event. This flower arrangement is unacceptable, she declared dramatically one afternoon. Adrian's father sighed heavily from his chair. You've rejected 12 flower arrangements. And I'll reject 13 if necessary. Anita laughed softly from the nearby couch while bridal magazines covered the table around her. Honestly, I think everything already looks beautiful. Adrian's mother pointed at her immediately. That is why you are not in charge. Anita burst into laughter. God, she loved this family. Not because they were wealthy, but because they made loving each other look easy, warm, natural. Something she spent most of her life believing only happened in movies. Across the room, Adrian watched Anita quietly while pretending to check emails. The diamond engagement ring sparkled softly on her finger whenever she moved. And somehow, every time he saw it, he still felt stunned that she said yes. Daniel noticed immediately. You're staring again. Adrian didn't even deny it. Daniel shook his head dramatically. You are finished. Probably. Anita looked up curiously. What are you two whispering about? Daniel grinned wickedly. I'm reminding him he used to claim he'd never marry. Anita raised an eyebrow slowly. Oh really? Adrian immediately glared at his friend. You talk too much. Daniel ignored him completely. This man once said relationships were distractions. Anita gasped dramatically. Wow. Adrian rubbed his forehead tiredly. I regret introducing both of you. But secretly, seeing Anita laugh freely like this healed something inside him every single time. Because months ago, joy looked unfamiliar on her face. Now it lived there naturally. The transformation felt extraordinary to witness. One evening, Anita stood inside her bridal fitting room surrounded by mirrors, while the wedding dress designer adjusted the fabric carefully. The room fell silent for a moment. Then the designer smiled emotionally. You look breathtaking. Anita stared at herself in the mirror quietly. The gown was elegant and timeless, soft white fabric flowing beautifully around her curves instead of hiding them. For years, Anita believed wedding dresses were designed for women smaller than her, women prettier than her, women society approved of. Yet standing here now, she felt beautiful, not despite her body. Inside it, the realization made her emotional instantly. Mrs. Taylor noticed first. Oh, sweetheart. Anita quickly laughed through tears. I'm okay. No, you're not. The older woman walked closer gently. You're overwhelmed. Anita looked back toward the mirror again. I spent years believing nobody would ever look at me and think bride. The room became painfully quiet. Even the designer looked emotional now. Anita touched the dress carefully. I thought love like this happened to other women. Mrs. Taylor's eyes watered immediately. Well, she whispered softly, they were wrong about you. Anita smiled through tears. Yes, she admitted quietly. They were. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Uncle Benson sat nervously inside a tailor's shop while getting measured for his wedding outfit. Life had changed dramatically after Anita's public return to the neighborhood. People treated him differently now. Some criticized him openly. Others constantly reminded him how lucky he was that Anita forgave him. And worst of all, he finally understood exactly how terribly he failed her. The guilt haunted him constantly, especially now, because the same niece he once treated like a burden had personally invited him to her wedding. Despite everything, that kindness broke him more than anger ever could. Back at the mansion, wedding invitations became a massive event on their own. Politicians, celebrities, business executives, influencers, everyone wanted invitations to Adrian Cole's wedding. News stations even discussed possible guest lists online. But Anita cared far less about status. The people who mattered most to her were already there. Adrian, his parents, Mrs. Taylor, the small circle of people who helped rebuild her confidence from nothing. One night, while reviewing seating arrangements, Anita suddenly became quiet. Adrian looked up immediately. What happened? She hesitated. Can I ask you something? Always. Anita played nervously with her engagement ring. Do you ever regret choosing someone like me? The question shattered the peaceful atmosphere instantly. Adrian stared at her in disbelief. Anita, I know it sounds stupid. No, he interrupted softly. It sounds sad. Her eyes lowered immediately, because deep down, part of her still waited for abandonment. Still waited for the moment happiness disappeared. Adrian moved beside her on the couch gently. Look at me. Slowly she did. You are not a compromise. Emotion filled her eyes immediately. You are not someone I settled for. His voice deepened softly. You are the best decision I've ever made. A tear slipped down her cheek. Adrian wiped it away carefully. I need you to stop speaking about yourself like you're difficult to love. The sentence hit her deeply, because she had spent most of her life believing exactly that. Difficult to love. Too much. Too big. Too broken. But Adrian shook his head softly. You know what I see when I look at you? What? A woman who survived cruelty and still chose kindness. His forehead rested gently against hers. That is rare, Anita. Her breathing trembled slightly. And I will spend the rest of my life reminding you exactly how precious you are. Tears filled her eyes completely now. Why are you so good to me? Adrian smiled faintly. Because someone should have been years ago. The wedding day finally arrived on a bright, beautiful Saturday morning, and the entire city buzzed with excitement. News vans gathered outside the luxury cathedral before sunrise. Social media live streams exploded. Fashion blogs debated Anita's wedding dress. People everywhere wanted to witness the billionaire wedding everyone had been talking about for months. Inside the bridal suite, controlled chaos erupted. Stylists rushed around. Makeup artists adjusted final details. Bridesmaids moved nervously between rooms. But somehow, despite all the noise, Anita sat unusually quiet near the mirror. Mrs. Taylor noticed immediately. Nervous. Anita laughed softly. A little. That's normal. Anita stared at herself thoughtfully. Today felt unreal. How could life change this much? Months ago she slept crying inside a storage room after being insulted all day. Now, she was about to marry the love of her life. The emotional contrast overwhelmed her. A soft knock interrupted the room. Adrian's mother entered dramatically wearing an elegant gold gown. The moment she saw Anita fully dressed, she froze, then immediately burst into tears. "Oh no!" Anita laughed emotionally. "Don't start. You look so beautiful." The older woman cried openly. That was enough to make Anita emotional too. Soon half the room started tearing up. Even the makeup artist sniffed dramatically. Meanwhile, across town, Adrian stood inside a private room near the cathedral adjusting his cufflinks while Daniel watched him carefully. "You look terrified." "I'm not terrified. You've checked your watch 14 times. Adrian sighed heavily. "What if she changes her mind?" Daniel stared at him. "She's literally obsessed with you." "That's not reassuring." His friend laughed loudly. "You're actually in love." Adrian looked toward the cathedral doors quietly. "Yeah." The answer came easily now. No fear. No hesitation. Just certainty. Minutes later, the cathedral filled completely. Celebrities mingled with politicians while cameras flashed endlessly outside. But when the music finally changed, everything went silent. The giant doors opened slowly, and Anita appeared. A collective gasp spread through the cathedral instantly. She looked breathtaking. Not because she suddenly transformed into someone else. Not because she became thinner. Not because she fit society's beauty standards. But because happiness radiated from her completely. The elegant gown flowed beautifully around her curves, while tears shimmered softly in her eyes. And Adrian forgot how to breathe. Daniel whispered beside him, "Oh, you're gone." Adrian barely heard him. Because the moment Anita looked at him from across the aisle, everything else disappeared. The guests, the cameras, the noise. Nothing existed except her. Anita slowly walked forward while soft music filled the cathedral. And with every step, old versions of herself seemed to disappear behind her. The frightened orphan. The girl mocked for her body. The woman convinced nobody would ever truly choose her. Gone. Because the man waiting at the altar looked at her like she was the greatest thing he had ever seen. When Anita finally reached him, Adrian took her hands gently. His eyes already looked emotional. "You're staring again," she whispered shakily. "You're beautiful," he whispered back immediately. She laughed softly through tears. The ceremony began. And for the first time in her life, Anita felt completely wanted, completely loved, completely safe. When it came time for vows, Adrian spoke first. His voice remained calm initially, then emotional halfway through. "You came into my life when neither of us expected it." Anita's eyes filled instantly. "And somehow, you taught me that love isn't about perfection." His thumb brushed softly across her fingers. "It's about peace." Tears rolled down Anita's cheeks now. "You made my life softer, warmer, happier." His voice cracked slightly. "And I promise to spend every day reminding you that you were always worthy of being loved completely." Half the cathedral cried immediately. Even Adrian's father secretly wiped his eyes. Then Anita spoke. and her voice trembled emotionally from the very beginning. For years, I thought love was something other people deserved. Adrian's chest tightened painfully. But then you found me. Fresh tears streamed down her face. You looked at me when the world taught me to hide. The cathedral became completely silent. And instead of asking me to become smaller, she smiled softly through tears. You loved me loudly. Adrian closed his eyes briefly, emotional himself now. Anita squeezed his hands gently. You gave me back my confidence. Her voice broke. You gave me back myself. Not a single dry eye remained inside the cathedral. And when the officiant finally pronounced them husband and wife, the applause nearly shook the building. Adrian immediately pulled Anita into his arms and kissed her deeply while cameras flashed everywhere around them. But neither noticed, because after everything they survived to find each other, nothing else mattered anymore. The wedding became the talk of the country for months. Television stations replayed clips from the ceremony endlessly. Social media flooded with pictures of Anita's breathtaking gown and Adrian's emotional reaction at the altar. People debated their love story everywhere. Some called it a fairy tale. Others called it destiny. But those closest to them knew the truth. Their story wasn't perfect because life suddenly became easy. It was beautiful because two broken people found healing in each other. And after the wedding ended, real life finally began. The first morning Anita woke up as Mrs. Anita Cole felt strangely emotional. Soft sunlight spilled through the giant bedroom windows while birds chirped faintly outside. For a few seconds, she simply lay there quietly staring at the ceiling. Then reality slowly settled in. She was married. Actually married. A sleepy voice beside her interrupted her thoughts. Why are you awake so early? Anita turned slightly. Adrian lay beside her with messy hair and tired eyes, somehow still looking unfairly handsome. A soft smile touched her lips immediately. I couldn't sleep. He reached for her lazily. Come back here. She laughed softly as he pulled her gently against his chest. The warmth of his embrace instantly calmed her racing thoughts. Neither spoke for a while. They simply stayed there together peacefully. And honestly, moments like this became Anita's favorite part of marriage. Not the luxury, not the fame, not the expensive vacations. Just this. Quiet mornings wrapped safely in love. Eventually Adrian kissed the top of her head softly. You okay? Anita nodded against him. I think I'm still shocked. About what? That this is real. His arms tightened slightly around her. Well, he murmured sleepily. You're stuck with me now. She laughed quietly. Poor you. Very poor me, he agreed dramatically. Married to the most beautiful woman alive. Anita groaned immediately. You start flirting before breakfast? I'm committed to the lifestyle. That made her laugh harder. And hearing that sound first thing every morning quickly became Adrian's favorite addiction. Married life suited them surprisingly well. Better than either expected. Anita brought warmth into Adrian's previously quiet mansion. She filled empty spaces with laughter, fresh flowers, music, and warmth. The staff adored her completely, not because she was rich now, but because she treated everyone kindly regardless of status. She remembered birthdays, asked about sick relatives, helped staff members secretly pay school fees for their children. And slowly, the mansion stopped feeling like a luxurious building. It became a home. One afternoon, Adrian returned from work earlier than expected. The moment he entered the living room, he stopped in confusion. The entire space was covered with papers, notebooks, and folders. Anita sat cross-legged on the carpet, surrounded by documents while typing furiously on a laptop. He raised an eyebrow. Should I be concerned? She looked up excitedly. No. That response somehow concerns me more. Anita laughed softly. Come here. Curious? Adrian walked closer and sat beside her. What's all this? Her expression softened slightly. I've been thinking. Dangerous start already. She nudged him lightly. I'm serious. Okay. Anita looked down at the papers thoughtfully. I keep thinking about girls like me. His face softened immediately. Anita, there are so many people suffering quietly. Pain flickered briefly across her expression. Girls who feel ugly because people keep insulting them. Her voice became quieter. Girls with nowhere safe to go. Adrian listened silently, because nobody understood Anita's compassion better than he did. She never forgot where she came from. Never. I want to help them, she whispered softly. Emotion tightened inside Adrian's chest instantly. What are you planning? Anita looked up nervously. You'll probably think it's too ambitious. Try me. She took a deep breath. I want to build shelters. Adrian blinked. For homeless women and orphans. Her eyes grew emotional now. I know what it feels like to believe nobody cares whether you survive. The room became very quiet. Anita swallowed hard. And I don't want other girls feeling that alone. For several seconds Adrian simply stared at her. Then slowly, he smiled. Not a small smile. Proud one. Marry me again. Anita burst into laughter. What? I'm serious. He gently held her hand. You survived cruelty and still became this soft. His eyes warmed deeply. That's extraordinary. Tears filled Anita's eyes immediately. So, you think it's a good idea? I think it's the best idea you've ever had. Within months, the Anita Williams Foundation officially launched. And surprisingly, the public response became overwhelming. Women across the country shared their own stories online. Stories about body shaming, abuse, homelessness, family rejection. And for the first time in her life, Anita realized something powerful. She was never alone. Thousands of women saw themselves in her journey. The orphan mocked for being overweight. The girl treated like she was unworthy of love. The woman who finally discovered her value. Soon Anita became more than the billionaire's wife. She became inspiration. One afternoon during a foundation event, a teenage girl approached Anita nervously. The girl looked around 16. Quiet, shy, familiar. You're Mrs. Cole? The girl whispered. Anita smiled warmly. You can call me Anita. The girl hesitated. Then tears suddenly filled her eyes. People make fun of my body too. Anita's heart immediately broke. The teenager looked down quickly. They say nobody will ever love me. Silence. Painful silence. Because Anita remembered those exact words. Too clearly. Slowly, she stepped closer. Then gently lifted the girl's chin. Listen to me carefully. The girl looked up with watery eyes. People who insult others are usually trying to escape their own pain. Emotion thickened Anita's voice slightly. And your body does not determine your worth. The teenager burst into tears immediately. Without hesitation, Anita hugged her tightly. And in that moment, she realized her pain finally had purpose. Later that evening, Adrian found Anita crying quietly in their bedroom. Concern immediately crossed his face. What happened? Anita laughed softly through tears. Nothing bad. He sat beside her quickly. Then why are you crying? She wiped her face. A girl hugged me today. That sounds emotionally dangerous already. Anita smiled weakly. She said hearing my story stopped her from hating herself. Adrian's expression softened deeply. For a moment neither spoke. Then he quietly whispered, You have no idea how many lives you're changing. Anita looked down emotionally. I spent years thinking my existence made life worse for people. His chest tightened painfully. And now, fresh tears filled her eyes. Now people tell me I give them hope. Adrian pulled her gently into his arms immediately. And honestly, he had never loved her more than in moments like this. Years passed beautifully. Not perfectly. No marriage is perfect. There were disagreements, stressful business periods, moments of exhaustion. But through everything, they remained each other's safest place. Adrian never stopped loving Anita openly. And Anita never stopped bringing warmth into his life. Eventually, the foundation expanded nationally. Shelters opened across multiple cities. Scholarship programs launched for orphan girls. Therapy services became available for abused women. And every single building carried the same message near the entrance. You were never difficult to love. The sentence came directly from Adrian. One evening after attending a charity gala, Anita and Adrian drove quietly through the city together. The atmosphere felt peaceful, comfortable. Then suddenly Adrian took a different road. Anita looked confused. Where are we going? You'll see. A few minutes later, the car slowed near an old familiar street. Anita's eyes widened instantly. No way. The bus stop. The exact bus stop where Adrian first found her crying in the rain. Everything looked smaller now. Older too. Adrian parked nearby quietly. For a moment neither moved. Then Anita slowly stepped outside. The night air felt cool against her skin as she stared at the bench where her entire life changed forever. Emotion flooded her chest instantly. I can't believe this is where we met. Adrian walked beside her calmly. You looked ready to fight the universe. She laughed softly. I looked terrible. You looked sad. His voice grew quieter. And I hated that immediately. Anita smiled emotionally. Back then she felt invisible, forgotten, worthless. And now? Now she stood here loved completely by the man beside her. Life truly changed strangely sometimes. Anita slowly sat on the same old bench. Adrian joined her. Silence settled comfortably between them while city lights glowed softly around them. Then Anita spoke quietly. You know something scary? What? If your car never stopped that night. Her voice faded. Because honestly, she didn't know where life would have taken her. Adrian gently took her hand. But it did stop. She looked at him. Emotion warmed her chest immediately. You changed my life. He shook his head softly. No. His thumb brushed across her fingers gently. We saved each other. Tears filled Anita's eyes again. Even after all these years, he still knew exactly what to say. A few moments later, Adrian suddenly smiled slightly. What? You know what's funny? What? The entire country thinks I rescued some poor woman. Anita laughed softly. You kind of did. No, he corrected gently. I found the best thing that ever happened to me. Her heart melted instantly. Then suddenly she laughed through tears. You're still dramatic. And you still blush too easily. They both laughed quietly beneath the night sky. And sitting there together at the exact place where hopelessness once consumed her, Anita finally understood something fully. Her story was never about becoming thin, or glamorous, or perfect. It was about finally realizing she deserved love exactly as she was. The orphan once mocked for her body became a woman admired across the country. The girl thrown away like she was worthless became deeply cherished. And beside the man who saw beauty in her long before she saw it herself, Anita finally found the life she always deserved. Not because destiny suddenly became kinder, but because love taught her she was never broken to begin with. The end. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel.